Hi, everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Hi, Mike.
Fancy meeting y'all here today.
It is fancy. It's a
Um,
fancy
oh,
rainy day too. I feel like it's England.
have we worked out all our issues with audio hijack recording and stuff?
I have.
Excellent.
I am. Well, as soon as I
I'm
can
gonna hit
find
the
it on
record
my.
button right now.
Where is it? That's the problem. Where'd it go? What are you? Oh, there you are. Found you.
All right, I'm recording. I due to find my clapperboard. Oh, still on last show's crap. Oh well.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah.
I know you've never lost your clap.
Ah, no, you can't see it anyway. That's good.
Perfect.
Ready when you are, Jeff.
All right, you ready, Dana?
I am. See.
All right, APG 413 in 3, 2, 1.
Well, I was smack on time. What's wrong with the rest of you?
We're no good. All right. Look at all these fine folks in the chat room, and then the others. Ahoy, matey. Pilot Pip, Mike Kuipers, Ken Hayes, Airline Pilot Guys Show. Oh, that's us. Aaron
It is.
Ort.
Ah, Pipperini. Well done.
Yay.
Look at all these.
To it.
Look at all these great people.
Oh, where is Pip in the lineup? I hope it's.
I think Liz just chucked it in the bin.
Oh, she did. Oh yeah. We're on the air, right? We're not supposed to say that on the air.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I have a filter set up that it's just
it's number 12.
It automatically gets sent to the trash bin.
Yeah.
We don't ever even see it. Oh, there it is, 12. Oh, about the color blindness.
Yeah.
Color blindness.
Oh, color. That's a nice drink.
Hello from Pitt, Kenneth Cook.
Did you say drink?
Our squadron drink used to be...
Yeah, you know what? I haven't had drink in a while, so I'm kind of jealous.
Oh dear, I'm drinking tea tonight.
Is it spiked tea, Nick?
No, it's...
There's some bourbon in there.
Is it real
Hog's
tea?
Back.
Hog's Back. Oh, that's...
Tea,
it's
traditional English ale.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just have the tea.
Yes, just find a tea, please.
I knew you were so full of crap when you said I'm having tea.
Andre Palozzi Zandonadi. Wow, what a great name. Hello from Brazil.
On message. Oh, look at her in her rainbow-coloured goggles.
Wait a minute.
In a ski lift going up.
Dana decided to leave us.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah, look at that. That's nice. Should we put that on screen?
Oh,
so
I think
can see Steph?
We should.
And you'll see why she's not with us today? Okay, hang on. Let me share my screen. Application window. Ba-boom, bam. There we go.
Now, what happens when they're all skiing and if they're all doctors and they go down and hurt themselves? Who helps who?
That's a good point. I guess the...
I mean, can they help themselves?
Orthopedic surgeon gets in there first.
Look at the one sitting next to Steph. Obviously, she said, if you don't want anybody to know that you're here, go ahead and wear that.
Yep.
So what happened to you, Dana? Did you take yourself out of the...
I have no earthly idea. It's there and then I was gone.
Oh, okay.
So, no clue. I didn't do a thing.
Weird. All right. There we go. Yeah, that's Steph right in the midst of her conference.
Yeah.
Learning all kinds of new doctor stuff, apparently.
Kind of new conferencing techniques.
Yes. Okay. I think whenever you all are ready, we can go ahead and get this show on the road.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm recording, and I think... Oh, wait a minute. I am not recording. Wow.
Party foul. Party foul.
I'm glad I actually looked at that. So it has a couple
No,
different
no,
SIM
no
cards.
offense, Liz.
Okay.
I seen Nick wearing. Why you? What was that for, Nick? That was
What
really
was
nice
that
of you.
I
Well,
was
you just gave
rubbing-
me the bird.
Oh, rubbing sleep out of my eye. But if it serves as giving you the bird, then I've done two things. I'm multitasking.
You are birding me. See again. I was about
I
to
should
comment on your
continue.
hat. I don't know where my Canadian Air Force hat is. Sorry, Liz. I just can't seem to. She's mad at me. Okay,
Oh,
when I come
yeah,
to
she
Toronto,
is.
I'll buy myself another one. Then you can see me wear it again. I hear all this background noise, all that noise downstairs.
Oh,
the
I can't
construction
hear
going
much, but then again, I am pretty deaf.
Deaf but dapper.
Hmm.
Okay.
I try to be.
The SIM card is back in. Record button is pressed once again.
You want
And
another click? Clapper.
yeah, we're fine. Yeah, I guess we should, just for the heck of it. Dana, one more clapper. APG 413 in 3, 2, 1. There we go. Those clapboards brought to you by Neville Bounds.
So I'm looking at the internal feed that we have here, and she says Dr. Steph has break time for the next 4 hours. So does that mean break time from skiing that she's going to now go lay down, or break time from
break time
her
from
conference
conferencing,
so
so
she
they
can go skiing?
Go skiing. That's what it is.
Well, okay. I'm in the wrong position.
Her priorities are obviously skewed. She
Right,
should be here
because
with us on the show.
I've got major construction going on in my house, Dr. Steph, and I'm here. My priorities are right here.
Well, go ahead and leave, Dana.
Never.
Nick and I will take care of it.
I would just talk about you behind your back.
There you go. Whee! Okay, here we go.
I would not leave.
Okay, let me go to Adobe Audition to hit this file here. And are you ready?
Plus, you missed me.
Let's go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 413.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 20th of February, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Picture light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, United Airlines is starting its own flight school because of the pilot shortage. A 2-year sentence for a passenger who tried to open up plane door mid-flight. More news, your feedback, and in today's Plane Tales, Buckeye 2. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 413 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger, a real-life radio professional in the New York City market. Emmy Award-winning, by the way. And I'm Captain Jeff, an airline captain and a former U.S. Air Force pilot, doing a podcast where we talk about aviation news and answering your great feedback. And let's see, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and we like to call the airline for which I fly and Dana flies Acme Airlines. And joining me today from his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired captain for an international airline based in London, it's Captain Nick.
Oh, hi there, Jeff. Isn't it a lovely start time? It's very kind of you to put it on at such a reasonable hour for those of us here in Blighty. And looking for a great show.
All right. Well, we're happy to make it more convenient for you today. And also joining us from the Northwest Atlanta suburbs, barbecue master, motorcycle rider, pleasure boat skipper, underwater photographer, and so much more. And last but not least, captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, Captain Dana.
Gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening. Great to be here. I've got to leave right now because I'm going out in my backyard and I'm building an ark. We have just got that much rain here in Atlanta that I'm building an ark. I think the floods are coming.
Yeah, it's we've been getting a lot of rain.
But in the meantime, I'm going to stay here and have a fun time on the show.
There you go. That's more important. All right. Thank you, Dana. And let's get on with the news.
Stand by for news.
All right. The first item in our news folder is one that Dana is going to take. Go ahead, Dana.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, guys, listen. United Airlines has announced that they're going to purchase and operate its own flight training academy, giving a new way to recruit potential pilots. It will be the only major U.S. airline to run its own flight school, and this will help to United combat the global pilot shortage and will offer candidates a pipeline to a highly sought job at a mainland line carrier. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of an ab initio program that they're starting. They've purchased a school over there in Phoenix, Arizona, and they're going to pretty much bring on students from 0 hours, where they'll be trained all the way up until they're eligible to go to one of their regional partners, build their experience there, which is still very consistent with what we've been doing all along. The only difference is in the United States, in trying to get into the major airlines, is you've been paying for it, or students have been paying for it on their own. Now, this is not a free ride that's being provided by United. What it is an opportunity that they're pretty much going to interview you, bring you into the program, and offer you financial aid with preferential financial institutions to qualified individuals, and bring them up and help them eventually. I don't think it says here, I haven't read that it says that they're going to reimburse, but certainly gives you just pretty much a guaranteed slot all the way up into mainline carrier at United. So I'm actually kind of excited about this, because this is it's hard for students that are trying to build their time, or really interested to go ahead and get into the business. And so, typical training costs run in between $90 to $120,000, $130,000 in training, depending on how good and how fast you get through the programs. So looks like they're looking at about 300 students per year to start with plans to grow to another 500 students. So they're trying to combat the upcoming pilot shortage. Pretty exciting.
I think that it won't be the last major airline here in the U.S. to do the same sort of thing as the shortage continues, and it gets tougher and tougher for them to find qualified candidates to fly these airplanes. And because you know what? These airplanes aren't flying themselves anytime soon.
No.
If ever.
And in the main line, the major carriers, the Deltas, the United, the Americans, the FedEx, Southwest, all those carriers probably at the mainline level will not feel the impact, because that's the desirable place to be. But what they're trying to combat really here, I think, Jeff, is that they're trying to combat the regional level, which is hard to build that experience and and there's not a whole lot of options out there if you're struggling to get through. And they're offering the program as a brand new, zero time pilot. So, there's some real incentive here for people that have been thinking about doing this. And, I wish I was, 20, 30 years younger. It would be really exciting because it's a complete opposite end of the spectrum from when I was growing up trying to get into the aviation business. You had to beg, borrow, and steal just to fly, I was going to say something out of Hong Kong, but just to get billed an hour, it was very much different world than it is today. So I'm excited for all the new people that are coming into the business.
It wasn't that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago or more, maybe 3, that JetBlue started up some kind of a new program very much like this. And I'm not sure if it was successful because I haven't heard anything about it in quite some time. In fact, one of the APG community members got a spot in the program. And if you're listening, I forget your name, I'm sorry. If you're listening, please contact us and send us some feedback and let us know exactly how that went or if it's still running. And again, I'm not sure. JetBlue is not really considered a legacy major carrier, but they are definitely in their own right major carrier here in the U.S.
They're considered a national carrier, along with somebody like Spirit, Allegiant. It's not quite as big, but Frontier. Right. Alaska is considered a national, I believe. So,
and what?
It's good size.
I have a feeling that if it gets tougher and tougher for the majors to find qualified candidates to fly these airplanes, that I don't see it far-fetched that at some point they say, basically, you don't have to pay us a thing. We'll take up the costs because we need you that badly.
Sure.
So yeah, those are the questions that I think anyone looking to enter a system like that needs to ask, and they need to ask a few like, how much is this going to cost me if I fail my training? How much am I going to have to pay back? And is the company going to contractually oblige me to stay employed to them? If so, for how much and on what wage scale? So you have to kind of add those things up before you just plow headfirst into a deal like this, because you could end up out of pocket big time without realizing, or tied to an airline which is going to pay you a much lower wage than your compatriots who are already working there for many years to come. So those are the kind of details that you need to take a look at.
Now, Logan in our chat room, in the Facebook chat room, is saying that he looked into JetBlue's program, and it was like $100,000, and most of it had to be paid back fairly quickly, if he remembers correctly. And then he also makes mention of the fact that Republic Airways has a school like this in Indiana. I think it's called Lyft. And in fact, one of our APG community members, Louisiana Steve, I've met up with him a few times in Indianapolis, which is where they have this Lyft Academy. I think it's called Lyft, the Republic program. And hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, Louisiana Steve. I'm wondering how things are going. Let us know. Send us some feedback. I'd like to hear how that's going for you.
So when you qualify, you called a lift operator?
Yes. Well, see, that's not so funny here because we call them elevators.
Oh, yeah, you do. Oh,
yeah.
Damn.
Stupid Yanks, right?
People understand.
Yeah. I knew what you meant, though. I thought it was funny.
You're getting very good. You're kind of getting mid-Atlantic.
I know. I'm your the opposite of anglicizing, or is it anglicizing?
It is anglicizing.
Okay,
that's very good.
So I'm slowly working my way towards that. But anyway, what was I going to play? I was going to play a sound effect. That was pretty funny, Nick.
Is that mad person you keep in your basement?
That is actually from the days when I did the program Catholic Weekend. This is a priest named Father Kyle, and he has just the greatest laugh in the world. And I have a couple of laugh clips from him laughing like that. So, and you can't help but laughing when you hear him laugh like that, I think.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Dana. Anything else to add before we move on to the next item?
Nope, I'm good. I think we did a great job with that. Thanks.
All right. Item B. air traffic controllers honored for saving F-16 pilot. This is in Dateline, Nashua, New Hampshire, February 6th, from CBS. 3 air traffic controllers who helped save an F-16 pilot were honored by New Hampshire Senator Jean Shaheen on Thursday. Jeff Albeck, Neil Cospito, and Michael Jacobson were on duty at the Boston Air Route Traffic Control Center on November 20th, 2018, when a normal shift turned dangerous. It was not a good day, said Lieutenant Colonel Nate Smith of the Vermont Air National Guard, who was trying to land the F-16 at his base in Burlington, Vermont. My fuel state was at a point where I could probably pull it off, but I was going to be in a bind. In fact, he had only about 15 minutes of fuel left, but unexpected nasty weather hit, blocking the landing. Lieutenant Colonel Smith contacted Boston Center, and the controllers redirected him to Syracuse, but he realized that without more fuel, he probably wouldn't make it to Syracuse. And that's when the air traffic controllers' cool heads prevailed. They said, we got a tanker about 80 miles off your nose. Do you want to receive gas? And I was like, well, I had Mexican last night and I already have a lot, too much. No, he didn't say that. He said, yeah. Good response. The tanker was a KC-135 and they connected for a mid-air refueling. The Boston Center crew saved the day with essentially thinking outside the box, Lieutenant Colonel Smith said. Senator Shaheen presented the controllers with a congressional record statement to recognize their heroics. And then one of the ATC controller, or the air traffic controllers, Neil Cospito, said, this is what we're trained to do. We don't do it for recognition. We do it because we want to help and we want to keep people safe. And the other controller said there was a lot of luck involved. What are the chances that we had a tanker just hanging out there? So, yeah, it was good timing. Very
Absolutely. And it comes from just doing your job and knowing what assets you've got around you and then going, hang on a minute. if I put
Домодедово.
Two and two together. No, I'm not going to Moscow's international
Timing
airport.
is
Thank you very
everything.
much. That would be a bit too far to go.
I was moving the window around and it accidentally tripped. Sorry. And no, I will not remove that in post. That'll stay in. That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So well
Nick, I
done,
didn't mean
guys.
to interrupt
Yeah,
you.
well done.
Okay. Item C. Oh, let's see. I have to find something to play. Let's see. Where is it? Here we go. Oh, yeah. Bad boys and girls. Bad girls. Okay. This is a story from the BBC News, bbc.com. A woman who tried to open a passenger plane door mid-flight, prompting 2 fighter jets to be scrambled, has been jailed for 2 years. Her name's Chloe Haynes, 26 years old, from High Wycombe. Is that
High
how you-
Wycombe.
High Wycombe. Dang it. I had a 50%
Close.
chance on that one.
Yeah. You're only halfway across the Atlantic, don't
Yeah.
forget.
Okay. Scratched a crew member as she lunged at the door, shouting, "I'm going to kill you all." 2 RAF fighter jets rushed to escort the plane back to Stansted, causing a sonic boom across Essex. Haynes, who admitted to 2 charges, was sentenced at Chelmsford Crown Court. Or is it Chelmsford?
Chelmsford.
Ah, shoot. I guess I need to go back and look at that video.
Yeah, you do.
She pleaded guilty to endangering the safety of a passenger plane and assault by beating. The incident took place on a Jet 2 flight with 206 people aboard, heading to Dalaman in Turkey on the 22nd of June last year. She blacked out and didn't really know what happened. She was mixing alcohol with medication. And let's see, the cabin crew member Charlie Coombe suffered scratches as she tried to prevent Haynes from opening the plane door. A passenger later told police he really feared she would open the door. She was yelling, the crazy lady, "I want to die and I'm going to kill you all," to the crew and passengers attempting to restrain her. And this is the best part, I think, of this article from the BBC. And I give you, bravo for including this in the story. The court heard it was impossible to open an exit door mid-flight, but many passengers would not have known this. many journalists don't know that either.
Yeah.
So thank you for putting that in there. That's good. As we said, if you have that pressurization going, it's impossible to open up that door.
If you're taxiing along the ground, though, it's very easy to open the door. So
Yeah.
if someone tries it then, or in the takeoff roll, can you kindly stop them?
Yeah, and then I guess it depends on the airplane. On Dana and my jet, on the takeoff roll, you won't be able to open it either, but taxiing you will, because our airplane does actually put a little bit of pressurization on just to prevent the doors from coming open.
Right.
Let's see. This is
Mr.
what-
Crimp added.
Yeah, that's kind of odd. It said he added that the RAF jets were sent in error. Do you understand? Do you know what he means by that, Nick?
Well, the only thing I can think is that what's an escorting jet going to do? Well, the only real option is to shoot down the airliner.
Right.
And was this a situation where the crew had been unable to communicate the fact that they were safe and just returning to Stansted, that the cockpit was still a secure environment and there was no concern? So someone might have jumped the gun on that, is the only thing I'm thinking.
Okay. So maybe they thought it was a more serious situation, like a terrorist act or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Someone trying to take over the aircraft. And of course, coming from where the Typhoons will be based in probably Coningsby, to get down to London requires an overland flight. And if they're going to get down there in time, they are going to break the speed of sound overland, which, of course, some people might have been excited about hearing a sonic boom. Boom, boom.
I would be excited about hearing a sonic boom.
Yeah, until your window's caved in.
Exactly. Unless it breaks my windows. And, and the sound of breaking glass. I wonder if anybody in our crew has heard that sound recently.
Yep.
That had nothing to do with a sonic boom.
Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah.
There was a sonic boom. It just wasn't that type of sonic boom.
Okay. Let's see. So anyway, she had been diagnosed with mental ill health. Oh, since the incident, they diagnosed her with mental ill health and had not touched alcohol since 22nd of June. She wasn't just drunk; she was unwell. He said. Now, is that the sound effects of your master bedroom?
Master what?
Master bathroom.
Yeah.
It is?
Debater?
No.
No, we're not debating.
I keep hearing
Do you hear it? Can you hear it in the
noises.
background?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the mic muted then.
Okay.
Unless I have to say something. I'm just going to be ready with the mic.
Oh, you
Sorry.
can keep it muted even if you have to say something. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see.
So she was jailed for 2 years for this offence, by the looks of it, which is quite a lot of time. If she genuinely had a mental illness, I'm not too sure if that's entirely appropriate.
Right.
But she had been given a community order for something similar involving alcohol and loss of control only 17 days before this incident. So I think the court were probably obliged to give her something more serious than a slap on the wrist.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Wow, that was kind of a stiff fine for if she really truly is mentally ill. But then, as you said, very recently another similar offense. So
yeah, I think there are levels of mental illness, and if you have the freedom to interact and be fully at your own cognizance in society, then there is still a responsibility on you to behave properly and within the law. So
clearly she's knocking
come
futz.
into it. Sorry?
Clearly she's knocking futz.
Well, yeah, that's another way of putting it. £86,000 Jet 2 reckoned it cost them. That's quite a lot.
it is. Yeah, quite. I mean, I've heard quotes of the cost of a diversion on an international flight not reaching that kind of number. That's interesting.
No, I don't know whether that includes all the potential fines that they can have from a European operator or on a European operator.
Could be maybe even the court costs, because I'm sure that they probably had to be representing the airline in the court proceedings.
Plus, effectively having to restart the flight, refuel, replan, do everything.
Major inconvenience for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Nick, you want to take this next one?
Sure. This is a passenger plane that was almost shot down over Syria. And this International Ops 2019 Ops Group, I think they're the outfit that let us know. Dave Mumford wrote the article. So it was the early hours of February of the 6th, and it was a commercial flight from Damascus to Russia-controlled Kenimimi. Mimi.
Well, so when you have a consonant like KHM all together, what do you do with that?
KHM yeah. Air base after coming under fire from Syrian air defenses. So the Cham Wings A320, I'd never heard of Cham Wings before. There are an amazing number of airlines out there now. 172 people on board, flying from ORNI, which is Nayaf, to OSDI, Damascus, when the incident took place. And this is according to the New York Times. So that's who David Mumford works for, apparently.
No, actually, he works for the ops group.
Does he?
They must have gotten this story from the New York Times.
Okay. That sounds good. Syrian air defenses directed anti-aircraft gun and missile fire against the Airbus, but failed to hit it. So, you do wonder, either their aim is pretty bad or hopefully the aircraft was reasonably high, but it's not going to be a hard target. Russia's Ministry of Defense has since blamed Israel for the near miss. Well, I don't think Israel pulled the trigger. At the time of the incident, though, Syrian air defense systems had engaged 4 Israeli F-16s, and Russians claim that these fighter jets were using civilian aircraft as cover while conducting strikes. Now, it's very interesting, isn't it? I do remember being over in Kuwait on a visit, and I was chatting to a Kuwait Airways captain who flew 707s, and was telling me in an earlier part of his career, he'd been flying a 707 towards Egypt, and as he approached the airfield, from under his wings, Israeli Phantom jets emerged and bombed the airport in front of him, which I thought was an incredible story. And it's not unheard of for fighter aircraft to use a civilian aircraft to conceal their identity, because they can hide behind them, use their use their radar signature to disguise themselves. Now, whether that was the case in this instance, I don't know. So, but Russia believe that they did it. Russia.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. So they've accused them anyway, and they said they have put commercial flights like this at risk in the past by timing their airstrikes on Syria too close to flights arriving at Beirut and Damascus. So you're obviously in a tense piece of airspace, and things are going to happen. So not good. In the past few months, though, there have been a number of airstrikes by Israel against military targets in Syria, including Damascus airport, with the Syrian government firing its own missiles over Syrian airspace and along the Lebanese border to repel the attacks. So it's obviously a difficult piece of airspace, but when you get a third party like this A320, 172 innocent people on board, getting involved in this kind of thing, that's when you really worry. And they say it's the latest incident for this to happen because, of course, there was a Ukraine International Airlines passenger plane shot down shortly after takeoff from Tehran, killing all 176 on board. And that was only a month ago. But I had a quick look in Wikipedia at the civilian aircraft that have been shot down in the past, and there are an awful lot of them. Other than that Ukraine International Airlines flight in 2014, of course, we'll remember the Malaysian Airlines 777, Flight 17, that was shot down by a Soviet-made Buk surface-to-air missile. 2007, in Mogadishu, an IL-76 crashed. There was another one in 2007. 2003, the Baghdad DHL flight, which I talked about, hit by a missile. Siberian Airlines flight in 2001. In Peru, there was a shoot down of a Cessna float plane in 2001. There was the Lion Air flight in 1998, and it just goes on and on and on, all the way back to the 1930s, which was the first time a civilian airliner was engaged, and this was during the Second Sino-Japanese War. So it's been going a long time, and while conflicts exist and the systems that the military have aren't perfect about identifying friendlies from enemies, and we know even the most sophisticated and well-trained countries can make this kind of mistake, that you're really got to be careful when you're flying around this type of airspace.
Yep. For sure. And if you're flying, intra Syria, I would imagine that pretty much every single flight there's going to be some risk of getting in someone's way, right?
Yeah, it's another piece of airspace I'd be very interested in flying over.
Yep. Well, if you had one of these drone defense systems, oh wait, that's a drone. That's not going to help.
Well, Nick, in your fighter, you wouldn't have minded flying that airspace back in the day.
Oh, yeah. We used to
Not
fly very
civilian.
close to that airspace out of Cyprus, which was mentioned in this article. So, but then again, I think if you're flying an aircraft from the military, you have a much better understanding of the threat from your intelligence outfits. And you know the risks, so you can make a judgment. But of course, we rely as airline pilots on our governments to advise us which countries are safe to fly over and which aren't. And if you're going to operate in a country right in the middle of the Middle East, you're going to have to take a certain level of risk.
Dana, thanks for just destroying my wonderful segue to the next episode.
My pleasure.
So I'll try it again. But if you had a drone defense system, looks like Ahmad Dan Hamadou in Africa sent us this, looks like kind of an advertisement or advertisement, or however you want to pronounce that word, of a system called Drone Dome C-UAS. And the article is from Raphael.co.il, I believe, if I can focus my eyes. I think that's what it says.
Yeah, Raphael. So, presumably an Israeli outfit?
Well, detection, neutralization, and interception system. Raphael's Drone Dome Counter Unmanned Aircraft Systems is a powerful off-the-shelf end-to-end solution that secures airspace against hostile drones. What I should do is, this week's episode of the Airline Pilot Guy is brought to you by our sponsor, Raphael Drone Dome, which is a counter unmanned aircraft systems, powerful off-the-shelf end-to-end solution that secures airspace against hostile drones. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to play my drone sound. Darn it. Okay, let me try this again. Where did it go? Come on, I just put it in here. There it is. This week's show is brought to you by Drone Dome. Detection, neutralization, and interception system. How's that?
Now you know, just have something go bang and the noise stop.
Do I have something like that?
I don't know.
No,
You might
that's
need
not
to
a
do that
bang.
in post. Ding.
How about this?
Around one.
A banana slap.
There you go. So apparently this system was used at Gatwick Airport. Remember they had a lot of disruption a couple of years ago.
Really?
Yeah, and also at the G20 Buenos Aires summit the same year, 2 years ago, and also the Summer Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires. So I think the South Americans have decided it's a good system for them to use. Seems to include a combination of radio jamming and powerful lasers to kill the drones.
Trying to make the Jedi that
Sword
sound.
stuff.
Sword,
yes. Very good.
It can detect targets as small as 0.002 meters square. Have no idea how big that is.
So not quite as not quite as good as I thought, because I was hoping it would kill mosquitoes and flies and things.
Nah, I don't think so. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would, wouldn't it? Have a little
Be a
fly
little-
zapper in your garden.
A little overkill for your backyard. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for sending in the ad for Drone Dome, but I guess they have the technology out there now to take care of these things and provide reasonable protection for a defense against these unmanned drones.
Yeah.
Hope you're doing all right over there in Nigeria, Dan, or Hamidou. I think I'm saying that right. All right. Delta, a very similar airline to the one that Dana and I fly for. Sometimes we consider it our sister carrier. Apparently, they had a really, really good year as far as profits are concerned, and they paid out a record-breaking amount of profit-sharing money to their 90,000 employees, $1.6 billion worth, actually, and which ended up being 16.7% of their annual pay from 2019. And as part of the thank you, they painted up one of their Airbus A321s with the livery, a special livery, saying thank you, painted on both sides of the aircraft, 45,000 names on one side and 45,000 names on the other. And anyway, so I think that was pretty cool too. So every employee of the company working in 2019, their name was actually on that airplane. That's pretty cool.
Have you seen your name yet? Oh no, not your airline.
I wouldn't.
Damn.
Yeah,
I
if
wouldn't
I
be
happened to
there.
work for that airline, I'm sure I would see
Yeah.
it.
Would have seen the profit sharing too.
Yes, I would have.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a shame you didn't get that.
Yeah, I'm very, very envious.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
All right.
Very sad day for us at Acme.
Yeah. Oh well.
It
We
would have
ended-
cost quite a lot to put that on.
Mm-hmm.
What would you have rather had? A little bit extra cash or an airplane floating around with a special paint job?
Well, I imagine if you took the amount of money it cost to do it and then you divided it by 90,000, it probably would work out to be about $1.50. So I'm not sure I would have.
Oh, well, what they could have done was say, look, well, we're going to do this, but instead we'll have a raffle, and one employee is going to get the value of this paint job, which would be quite a nice gift.
It would be.
It would be, or a cup of coffee from Starbucks. Either one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to drink coffee.
All right. And finally, in the news items, we have this item G, an accident in India A321 at a city that Nick is going to pronounce for us.
Am I? Are you sure
Yeah.
about that?
Pune. How would you pronounce that? Pune?
Very, very punny.
Punny? Ah.
Yeah, very, very punny place. It looks like Poon, doesn't it?
It does look like Pune.
Yeah. So this is by Simon Radecki, who does that wonderful Aviation Herald, a website. And he said in Air India, Airbus A321-200 registration VT PPU, which doesn't stand for Professional
PPU.
Pilots Union,
Oh, no.
performing flight AL852 from Pune to Delhi with 180 people on board, was accelerating for takeoff on runway 10 when the crew spotted a Jeep and a person on the runway. And the
Steph!
driver of the Jeep was had the top down. She was driving topless across the runway, and she was a doctor, and she was just saying, I'm just heading off to go skiing. Got lost.
At a conference.
Yeah, exactly right. So, not funny actually when you're doing about, you're getting very close. You're past 100 knots, and there's only a high-speed abort option left, and this Jeep's going to be in your way regardless. They rotated prematurely, so they calculated a rotation speed to lift the nose wheel off and then allow the airplane to climb away. But at 130 knots, they rotated prematurely, so earlier than normal. And I think this is quite a clever move. It's not something I think any pilot should do pardon me, unless the circumstances are dire. And if they had a potential collision, then that's pretty dire. But we know that when they do tests on prototype airliners, they'll do a minimum unstick performance flight where they will rotate the aircraft very early, and they will basically drag the tail along the ground and work out the earliest possible speed at which they can get the aircraft off the runway. That becomes then minimum unstick speed. And the airplane isn't normally supposed to fly like that, but it will fly. And if you need to get everyone in the shortest possible distance, and that's the way to do it. Now, with those aircraft, when they're doing trials, we've got special plates or skids or big wooden blocks attached to the tail of the aircraft so that they won't do any damage, because this airliner scraped its tail along the ground, and it's not designed to do that. So it's worn a big spot. Now, not as badly as that other machine we saw last week, which ripped open the whole of the back end of the airplane doing something similar. This has just scraped some paint. But I think the crew actually did quite a good job. They obviously, the tail contacted the runway surface, but they climbed out safely. But then, interestingly, they
so let's stop. Let me stop you. So at this point, let's grade them out of like A, B, C, D, F. I think I would give them an A, or maybe even an A plus for avoiding the Jeep and getting the airport.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
what are you writing down?
I would agree with Jeff on that one. I mean, you're in a critical situation, and use every resource that you have, and probably max power on the aircraft, and pull it off the ground and get it off the ground as quickly as you possibly can. That's every effort they could make to in decision.
So your grade? Your grade?
A plus actually.
All right. So Nick, what do you think? Same thing?
Yeah, right. I'm going to give him an A because I think that's good thinking.
Now, was that the whole part, the whole exam, or was there
I
like
wish.
a part B?
Yeah,
wish. They then you can see. I think they would have worked out that you can't get the airplane off the ground at 130 knots. And I think, having chatted to Captain L about the A321, I think it's quite tail strike prone. It's not an easy airplane to land without banging the tail, and certainly I think in takeoff it would be the similar situation. So they probably had an idea they might have banged the tail, but they disregarded that and continued to climb the aircraft to 33,000 feet and continue to Delhi. Now, the problem there arises, you've damaged the skin of the aircraft, and you're now pressurizing the aircraft and climbing up to quite a high altitude to conduct a flight. So if that skin were to give way, you could end up with a significant explosive decompression that would obviously cause a lot of problems for everybody on board.
Your grade then for the second
I'm giving them an F for that.
Yeah, I'm thinking like a D minus on that one. I mean,
I'm thinking F or F minus. Bad decision to.
Yeah. So when they landed, they found that there was damage to the tail skin, and subsequently discovered there was also structural damage to the fuselage frame. So the DGCA, the investigation organization in India, have opened an investigation, and both pilots have been de-rostered, a nice way of saying they've been grounded until the end of the investigation. And they say it's unclear why the crew continued the flight to Delhi, and the probe will focus onto whether the crew were aware of the extent of the damage and whether a tail strike sensor was installed. Now, I know on my 330s and retrofitted to the 340s, we had a tail strike sensor, but even so, you've got cabin crew there in the back galley, usually on most of these airplanes. And it's pretty obvious when you scrape the back end of the aircraft down the runway. It makes an awful lot of noise at the back of the airplane, apparently. So I'd be very surprised.
Am I totally screwed or what?
Oh, dear.
That's what the pilots are saying now.
Yeah. So it looks like it was an Indian Air Force Jeep. So they confirmed that during the morning hours, a service vehicle had been cleared for a routine task on Pune's runway, and the service vehicle was near the runway they won't admit that it went on the runway, forcing the A321 to rotate earlier than planned. The Air Force is also conducting an investigation, so there's probably some chap there who's peeling an awful lot of potatoes right now.
Yeah, so he's also saying,
Ladies and gentlemen, am I totally screwed or what?
Yeah, the only good thing about this is that they had no injuries, never know, they got the aircraft safely on the ground. The story is great from that point of view, but the rest of it, no, we're not too sure about some of those decisions.
yep.
Well, I have an answer to the reason why they wanted to go to Delhi. It's their freedom leg. They want to go home.
Yeah, probably.
That might have something to do with it.
May have. I mean, I say it jokingly, but that very well could have had something to do with it. Or they, had a hot date or, something in Delhi. They just didn't want to go back to that airport. Maybe, I don't know runway lengths. Obviously, probably not an issue. However, maybe the weather. I mean, we don't have all the data here, right? So maybe the weather was questionable. Didn't want to
trying to defend them, Dana. They're screwed.
You know what? You know me. I try to play good devil's advocate. I'm just throwing that out. We don't have all the facts.
You're playing the good devil today. Okay.
Yeah, I am. Smile. My wife said smile.
Well, that was the news. And now it's time for the part of the show where we kind of catch up with each other and what we've been doing since the last show. And let's see. Nick, how about you start out?
Well, I have had a quiet few days, thanks very much. And the only thing I really did was pop off and join a bunch of my old comrades and some new captains at a dinner which Virgin Atlantic put on at a rather swish club in Mayfair in London a few days back. And that was very pleasant indeed. So met with champagne and canapes, and then up for a lovely meal. Sat down with the new one of the new directors and some old comrades at our table, and they had, I don't know, probably about 10 new captains have been promoted. So this was really to celebrate their promotion, which is I think an excellent thing for the company to do, but also they got some of us retired guys and girls in, because we had the lovely Camilla, who was one of our lady captains, sitting near us, so we were able to chat with them. And it's just nice when the company think, oh yeah, we'll get these blokes back and let them enjoy a meal on the company. So that was very pleasant indeed. So that's really been it. There's been nothing else going on. I'm because it's been quite quiet, I'm well up on my plain tale. So I've got the one tonight is obviously done, and then I've nearly finished the next week's one, which is great because I do have a busy time coming up with some lectures, a few parties, and some photography work, which will be pleasant for a change. But that's been it, really, from me.
Did they, at the dinner, did they ask for any of your sage advice?
Certainly not.
Okay. Good thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Absolutely.
No, they missed out. They could have learned a lot from you. Okay. Well, thanks, Nick. Let's see. Dana, how
Hi.
about yourself? What you been up to?
Well, I just finished a 4-day trip. Very challenging weather, as I'm sure you're well aware, Jeff. The last 4 days has been difficult coming in and out of Atlanta. Flew a first first day was 3 legs, second day was 3 legs with a little bit of a meetup. I'm sure you might have something to say on that one. Do you?
I do. I have some audio here.
Well, why don't you go ahead and roll that?
Okay, let's do that.
Hello, APG community and opposing bases community. This is Captain Dana, and I'm sitting right here with AG in a very small south central U.S. city that they are working in. I think we call it the Triad?
That's right. The
secret location, the Triad. And I'm sitting here with AG and my first officer, and we just finished a wonderful burger joint. It is called Hops in...
Yeah.
Hops Burgers.
Pop's Burgers. There we go. I was trying to read the sign as we're recording here. Anyways, I wanted to pop in and say hello to both communities because we're going to share this recording amongst both of our podcasts. So it should be a fun time. Without further ado, I want to let AG say hello and see what he has to say.
Hello, APG, and of course, OB listeners. I'm sure it's been at least 20 minutes since you've heard my voice on the program. I know I'm probably featured on the APG show every 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, if you guys knew it was good for you, anyway.
Liz, just a note. Go ahead and if we ever receive anything from AG again, put him on the TB list, the total ban. Okay, thank you.
But seriously, good to talk to you guys. Great dinner. That was a fantastic burger. If you're ever in the Triad area, if you can figure out how to get here, Hops Burgers. There's 2 locations. Fantastic. Get the buffalo fries. Very good.
Oh, I have to disagree. The poutine.
Oh, poutine.
Dude, the poutine was really good, but my vegetable plate was even better.
Our Canadian listeners will,
Hi, Liz.
Liz and Charlie Papa and Juliet Bravo, shout out to you guys. I did try the poutine fries. They are pretty amazing. So you got that going on in Canada.
You do have that going on. And by the way, poutine is not what you Americans think is poutine. It's French fries covered with brown gravy with cheese on it.
That's right.
Sounds delectable.
It was
Something
very
I shouldn't be eating.
Very good.
But I don't know. I had a great time. How about you, AG?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, very nice. My first officer's being shy in the back seat, but actually, we finally figured out where we had flown together before. And anybody that's ever heard of Radio Roger, this is the first officer I had when I met Radio Roger in Newark, New Jersey, when I was on an overnight. So, very interesting backstory on that. Anyways, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to say, AG?
No.
Well, in that case, why don't we send it back to the studio?
All right, Captain Jeff, back to you.
RH, back to you. Bye-bye, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Sounds like you guys had a good time, Danny.
So I'm confused. Was that RH or AG?
That was AG. AG was sending it to Jeff, and I was sending it to RH.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
he
makes
was because
sense
they're
now.
going to play the same thing on their show.
Gotcha.
On
Yeah.
this show, exactly.
Come on, Nick,
He's
try to keep
a
up with it.
he's a man of few words, isn't he? I suppose that comes from his helicopter flying because those damn things are so noisy. You spent the entire flight in silence because there wasn't any point trying to talk to each other, was there?
Not much talking going on
No.
for sure. No, he's a super guy, really cool, laid back. Kind of quiet on the quiet side, but we had really good conversation. My first officer, also a military guy, and no, I'm sorry. I don't even think we talked about that. I don't think he's military, but it's same age range kind of thing. So that worked out really well. And let me tell you what, that burger was. And I'm not a big burger guy. I'm certainly not a French fry guy. I've never eat them, but whenever I see poutine on the menu, I make an exception. And it was, very rarely do I ever have a bad meal because I'm always saying it's wonderful, a fabulous food. Whenever I'm doing the podcast reviews here. So, but that was fun meetup. Then first day flying into Baltimore, had ATC announcing that there was a drone on short final into Baltimore on runway 33 left.
I think we have the sound, the recording of that. Okay, yeah, there it is.
Quick, turn on the drone dome defense. Ding.
Ding. Yeah, and of course your anxiety on that, my anxiety got a little elevated because now I'm flying an airplane at a relatively high speed with high mass, flying against something that has little mass but has certainly possibility of some high impact power. So we kept our eyes peeled for it, but apparently it went away before we got there, and that was a good thing. I have to admit this, Jeff. You and I are very familiar with going through Atlanta and swapping aircraft all the time.
Mhm.
The first 2 days, 6 legs with the same aircraft and the same flight attendants. The entire crew in the aircraft stayed together for all 6 legs. That was amazing.
I did see a memo a little while back from our company that said that they were going to try to start doing that more.
Yeah.
So that's good
So-
good to see. Yeah, I think on this trip for the first, I think every day of the trip I stayed on the same jet, not the same one for the entire 3 days, but the same every day. We kept the same airplane, so we didn't have to swap. So that was nice.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and I even wrote a report into the company stating as such because it helped. It went a long way to build unity within our within our little work group. I mean, the flight attendants and the two pilots, we kind of got to know each other, and don't have to rebrief every time, keeping the same aircraft, don't have to worry about looking up all the MELs, time pressures. Of course, you gain about 10 minutes by not swapping an aircraft because, not waiting for everybody to get off the aircraft, then going to the new aircraft, getting settled in, going through the logbook and reacquainting yourself with what's going on with that aircraft. So it is actually a big advantage. So I really wanted to comment on that and say that, we really enjoyed having the opportunity to do that. A lot of bad weather, a lot of low Cat 1 approaches right down to minimums. Had one auto land. A couple of MELs that were interesting. My FO got rerouted into Baltimore, and I ended up going deadheading still to Birmingham, and then ended up in Charleston. And the aircraft that I took over to Charleston had no auto throttles and no VNAV as a result, in very bad weather. So that was fun.
I love it when they.
That's what I just said. That was fun, and I meant that it was fun because it keeps you so much more in tune to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not sitting there just monitoring stuff. Although you're always thinking and really considering all the the different things that can happen. But when you have something like that, and then the same thing. I mean, I had no auto spoilers on the last day. Kept the aircraft for 3 legs, and the best landings of the entire trip were on the last day. I mean, it was just the aircraft touched down nice and soft. Then you bring out the auto spoilers. Bring out bring out the spoilers, and everybody getting off the aircraft. Wow, that's the best landing you've ever had. Blah, blah. It makes a difference because you're able to touch the aircraft down and then deploy the spoilers. So,
it's
those
just like the 7. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The 727 did not have auto spoiler system, and so it was always manual spoilers, and it was always the captain, whether the captain was flying or the first officer flying. And there was a saying that we had, Dana, that you can make, like, the captain can make a good landing bad and can make a bad landing good, depending on how they actuate the spoilers on landing.
Correct. Oh, and I just realized why I confused why military, not military, because I did have 2 other first officers on this trip, and one of them I had just recently flown with, and he was a C-130 guy, and I flew with him, so he was pictured in my mind, so that's why I was thinking military. But anyways, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Got a lot of construction going on in the house right now. Got the remodel of the master bathroom. Needed to be done.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
I'm glad you took some time away from the construction project to be on the show with us today.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
All right. Let's see. I was on a 3-day trip this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it was, instead of going back and forth between Rochester, New York, this time it was going back and forth between Des Moines, Iowa, except for the very last turnaround, which was up to Dulles, which it's been a while since I've been up to Washington Dulles International Airport. And so, yeah, it worked out well. As you mentioned, the weather was kind of cruddy, a lot of rainy, low visibility kind of stuff in Atlanta every single day. And as you said, mostly right down to minimums on the Cat 1s, and on one of them we elected to set up for a Category 3 auto land, and I'm glad we did because it was pretty skosh. We, it was definitely way above Cat 2, Cat 3 minimums, but getting close to being below Category 1. So I'm glad we briefed it that way, and I flew it. And I just wrote a note on my notepad here when you were talking about that I need to remember to log my Category 3 landing in our scheduling system.
If it was logged in the airplane, then it should be logged in the scheduling system.
Nope.
Oops.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't work that way. It logs your landing, but it does not log your Category 3. So you have to do that manually every time I've checked. Anyway, it was definitely logged in the airplane, but last time I did this. Yep, it wasn't marked. So
Okay.
you might want to go in there and just check, just
will
make
check.
sure. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I also had a little meetup on the second day of the trip, the second layover in Des Moines, Iowa. The first layover, it was spent mostly with talking with the Democratic National Party and going over the whole problem with the counting of the caucus votes and such. And because I'm kind of a leading expert in that field, and no, I'm just kidding. I had nothing to do with that. But the second day, Justin O'Neill contacted me and said, if you're up to getting some good barbecue, let me know. And I said, absolutely. And here's a little bit of audio from our meetup on Tuesday. I am in a vehicle. I don't know who this person is. I think they've just kidnapped me.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm with Justin O'Neill, a community member, and he saw that I was going to be in Des Moines for a couple of nights this week, and he said, hey, you want to go get some good barbecue from Iowa while you're here on Tuesday? Yeah, I'm always up for barbecue. So he picked me up from the hotel downtown. We drove up here to, what did you call this area, the north side?
Yeah, North
North
Des Moines, yeah.
North Des Moines, and went to Smokey D's barbecue, and it was really, really good. I had ribs, and what did you end up having?
The burnt ends.
Burnt ends.
Burnt ends.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And I guess that I was watching something on television, I believe. The burnt ends are actually something that comes off the rack of ribs, right?
Something like that. I just know they're delicious. So.
They are. They are. Anyway, so we drove up here. He picked me up, drove me up to Smokey D's, and then I met up with, it's a bumpy road, sorry. Met up with my first officer, Cody, and his wife, Ashley, and their son, Jackson, I believe. His wife and son were up here visiting her family that live in the area. And so I said, if you're interested, why don't you come up there and join us at Smokey D's? And so they did. And so it was very, very nice to meet all of the Cody's in-laws, as well as his wife and his son. And now we're heading back to the hotel because Justin's got to get me in bed before a certain hour because I have to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, which is crazy. But yeah, that's the kind of trip I like to fly. Anyway, so I'm going to hold the microphone in front of, because he's driving, so he can't hold the microphone himself. I'm going to let Justin say hi to everybody in the on the crew and the community, and say whatever you want.
Yeah, you got to hold the microphone there. Got to change the own gears here on the truck. So yeah, it was. Well, it's already got a dent in the back, so I don't know. So. Anyway, yeah, saw Captain Jeff was going to be in town. Figured, yeah, shoot you a message, see if you wanted to do a meetup. We were kind of joking on the way up here about y'all talking about barbecue. So shot some options for barbecue. We didn't just choose the good one, we chose the best one, which was Smokey D's. But apparently we found out tonight that there's a better one. What was that, Cactus Bob's or something?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure exactly where that is, but I guess it's a little bit further north.
Yeah, so, if you're ever back in town, that could be another option. But yeah, glad to have you in Des Moines. Glad to take you up there to get some barbecue, get you out of the hotel for an evening.
Awesome. Yeah, so Justin and I were communicating back and forth, and he said, okay, there's a place out near the airport, and he put in parentheses, good. Yeah. And then the place,
Jethro's, yeah.
Down here closer to the hotel.
A Des Moines local thing, Jethro's.
Okay. He said, better. And then Smokey D's, best.
Yeah, definitely best. My wife and I had it at our wedding, so that's pretty high praise there if they came and catered that thing. So always happy to get up there when we can.
Absolutely. So I don't know if we're going to be flying over your house tomorrow morning, but we did this morning. And Our flight path took us almost right over the top of Justin's house. So if we do it again tomorrow morning, make sure that you're out there waving. We'll look for you.
Can you flash the lights on your way over?
Sure.
Most people wouldn't like the fact that airplanes buzz your house at 5:30 in the morning, but it's kind of a selling point if you like to watch.
Yeah, if you're an aviation geek, we're all for that kind of stuff. Anyway, I guess it's now time to send it back to the live recording, and just wanted to say hello and introduce you to Justin.
Nice to meet you, APG community.
He was waving. They can't see They can't see you. It's not video.
Driving downtown here, and yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, back to you, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff.
Good job, Jeff.
Thank you. Wait a minute. I got to play the... see if I can find it.
Shut up, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, shut up. Shut up, Jeff.
There we go. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, our meetup in Des Moines. And Justin, it was a pleasure meeting you, and hope to meet up with you again in the future. And anybody listening right now, if you happen to live in the Des Moines area, I'm sorry you didn't see our last-minute social media alert that we were sort of having a little meetup there, but maybe next time we'll get to see you.
I certainly envy you visiting all these fabulous restaurants and eating barbecue all the time. That sounds great.
Yeah, it was funny because I was talking with Liz, and I said, I wonder if people think that that's all I eat when I go on my layovers.
Yep.
Barbecue.
Yep.
Usually when I'm talking about food, it's barbecue because it's usually because when I'm flying with Brent Herron, he and I like to always, go for barbecue places, and but that's just a fraction of the different types of cuisines that I eat while I'm on the trips. I like everything, actually. That's my problem. I like everything. But
I was like you had fun there.
yeah, we did. And let's see what else. I am basically, unless I pick up some overtime flying tomorrow and Saturday, which I probably won't because I do have some obligations at my church, I will be off until the first part of March because I have a vacation period next week. So that'll be nice. Get to actually, get some good sleep, not have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Again, I can't really complain too much because that's what I do. I fly those trips on purpose, and so I can't really complain about getting up super early in the morning. But so I'm looking forward to that, and I guess now would be a good time for us to transition to the coffee fund. Here we go.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
All right, the Coffee Fund is your way, dear listener, to support the show in a financial way. And we call that the Coffee Fund. And you can become part of the Coffee Fund Club. No, the Coffee Bar Club or the Coffee Fund Cadre, your choice. And a couple different ways to do that. One is the Coffee Fund Classic method, which is basically via PayPal. And since the last episode, we have contributions from Daniel Kenber, George Leslie, Ron Tech Solutions, not Wrong Tech, but Ron Tech, Chris Randall, Randy Ward, and David Lieb. So thank you, all of you, for using the classic method of the Coffee Fund. And the other way to do it is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. Basically, you say, I'm going to give you this much money per episode, and you can, restrict the maximum amount that you get charged for the month, etc. But in either of these cases, you have access to some perks like our occasional, what do we call them? Crew logs. And since the last episode, we have a new patron, and his name, Ben Singer. Now, I Oh, I'm still screen sharing the photo. Okay, thank you. Nick, let me get back to this. Thought I hit the button to move that out of the way, but apparently not. And one of my devices is introducing
Making a funny noise.
interference. Must be this. So we're taking a slight pause, Liz.
Ah, there you go. Well done.
Well, yeah, but I didn't do that.
Oh.
Um,
Well, whatever it was, had eaten enough and
Yeah,
it's
it's-
gone back to sleep.
stopped its noise, and so let me just make sure that I turn the cellular off of this. That's the cellular antenna making that noise. All right, now back to the countdown timer. Okay. So, funny story about our new patron, Ben Singer. I was going for, I think it was the day that I came home from my trip last week on Thursday. No, must have been the next night. Because the thing that I did on the when I came home from the trip last week was record last week's show. So I guess it was I don't know when it was. Heck, I went out to this place called the Gyro Village, a Greek restaurant not too far from where I live, to pick up some dinner for Linda and I, my wife. And I was walking in the front door of the Gyro Village, and this guy walks up to me and he goes, "Hi, Captain Jeff." And I went, "Oh, hi." And he said, "My name's Ben." And so I went, "Oh, okay." He's a listener of the show. And he said, "In fact, I just became a patron of the show." And he said, like a half an hour ago. So it was a little bit of after 6 o'clock.
What a
at night.
coincidence.
Yeah. And at 5:30, I said, "Oh, really? I didn't know." And of course, I hadn't seen my mail, or I didn't get any kind of a notification, because it was just literally less than an hour before that time that he signed up to become a patron of the show. And he said, "Yeah, I've met Dana at the that Atlanta Av Geek meetup," or whatever the title of it was, in that Derek Vento put on, and Dana went representing the APG show. And so Ben has met Dana, and he's met me now. And so when I was waiting for I ordered the dinner, and I was waiting for it to be prepared, and I was going through my phone, and sure enough, I see this thing from Ben, and he was there with his wife. They were having a nice dinner, and then they were going to go see a movie. So that was like, talk about a small world. It was like, wow.
Wow,
That's crazy.
absolutely. You sure he wasn't just stalking you?
Well, maybe he was. In fact, I think I saw him in my backyard earlier today. So Ben, stop it. Or I tell you what, you can stalk me if you up your contribution like 20-fold. Then I'll
There you
put
go.
up with it.
Perfect.
No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Anyway, so I thought that was this aviation world that we're in is truly a small one for sure.
Absolutely.
So, welcome, Ben, and thanks to all the folks who contributed via the Classic Fund. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with one of the best parts of the show, your feedback. Oops, let's see. Let me turn that up a little bit.
Captain, incoming message.
Alrighty, looking at our feedback folder. Let's see here. I need to catch up and find the feedback folder here. Here we go. The first item there is from Cameron, and actually the first two of these feedback, the first two feedback items in today's show have to do with that incident out of Sydney where the Qantas A330 was taking off and performing their departure procedure, and the airplane coming in to land on that same runway behind them ended up being told to execute their missed approach procedure because it looked like the 330 was going to still be on the runway. And so there was a little time or a little incident where the airplanes got sort of close together. And so Cameron writes, just want to give an explanation on the 737 and A330 Qantas near miss. I'm familiar with the Sydney airport ops. The active runways at the time were 34 left and 34 right, both. Due to close proximity to the runways, parallel ops are in place. You cannot turn towards the opposing runway. Both aircraft were using 34 right, with both the departure and missed approach go around directions for that runway are all right turns to the east. Question for you all. At what point on approach would you make the decision to go around if another aircraft was still on the runway? I would have thought 400 feet would be a bit late. Safe skies and tailwinds, Cameron. And he says, by the way, he is also a new listener and he is also a patron. So welcome, Cameron, to the ABG community, and thank you for being a patron of the show. Now, I'll start off by saying that this whole kind of situation is very fluid and dynamic. I guess it's saying the same thing, isn't it? But you have to kind of, or I think you have to have a sense of when you think that previous airplane is going to be lifting off, because as soon as it lifts off, it's your runway now, if you're the one coming in for landing. And in my experience, Nick, the controllers seem to be a little bit more conservative than I would be. I would probably, the times that I've had to go around because of traffic still on the takeoff roll or landing roll, if it were left to me, I probably would have gone a little bit longer before deciding, okay, we can't do this because they are still on my runway and I need to go around. And they tend to be a little bit more conservative and do it a little bit earlier, because a couple of times I've gone, well, if you just waited like 2 seconds, I think this whole thing would have been resolved and you wouldn't have had to, make me go around. How about you?
Yeah, and that's the point where you get these kind of problems, aircraft getting relatively close proximity, one in the go around and one taken off and in its departure. So unless you separate them very quickly, then you're going to get these kind of incidents. I'm a bit with you. If it's a takeoff, they really need to have broken ground, but I don't mind if he's well down the runway. I don't mind having that decision made for me at 50 feet. Quite honestly, I don't really care. So yes, I can wait quite late. I don't mind. If he's on the threshold, then 400 feet would probably be a bit late for me.
Right. Yes.
Would be good. I'd rather be well established. I don't want to go that low because this guy's obviously not going to get out of the way in
Exactly.
time. Landing traffic, not too fast. I used to fly big airplanes, so I would rather have the runway well clear, because I know my landing roll could be quite significant. And if it's, I'm not like a little 320 that can land and start relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm going to use a lot of runway, so I'd rather have the runway to myself. But and I would always rather the air traffickers were a bit on the conservative side. But you're right, when you're just trying to get the flight in and it's going to be 10 or 15 minutes if you do a go around before you can land, and if it's the first or second leg of the day for you guys, and it's going to have a roll-on effect throughout the day, then you really want to get them on the ground, and you're not too fussy, I suspect.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was usually the one landing of the day, the end of my day's work, usually after a very long flight. I was more than happy to get the airplane on the ground, but I didn't have a lot of by that time of the day, usually a lot of spare capacity. I was usually pretty tired to run things too close. So it wasn't like I was, on my metal. I was usually thinking, get this bloody thing on the ground. I want to go home.
Right. Yeah, I could totally understand that.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you say, sometimes the decision for the controller to make you go around can put you in a much more dangerous situation than if they just let you land, even if the airplane is like still way at the other end of the runway. Again, and you make a good point. It depends on what type of airplane you're flying as well, and how quickly it can slow down and stop and that kind of thing. But it's a judgment call that they make. They're trained to do, and what can you say?
Well, having chatted to Adam, our lovely air traffic controller at Heathrow, about this kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
they have pretty hard and fast rules. It's It's not something that they can use a lot of judgment on. So, if it gets to the point where they're going to break that rule, they're definitely going to send you around. And
Yep.
the times I've been sent round at Heathrow because there was an aircraft on the runway, it did happen reasonably early. So, they obviously went with their experience. Now this guy's not going to get in, send him around.
All right. Thank you, Cameron, for sending us the feedback and also becoming a supporter of the show. Also, Ben Ippolito sent us feedback regarding this, and he says, and it really hurts me to say this first sentence, Captain Nick is right.
Way!
I was going to
First time this year.
Sydney does do sod props.
That does not sound very healthy.
It sounds
you don't want to do the sod
painful.
props.
SODPROPS, which stands for Simultaneous Opposite Direction Parallel Runway Operations, where arrivals are to 34 left, departures from 16 left. But this is normally during the transition to from the curfew, which is when Acme Red used to arrive from Hong Kong.
Indeed.
So that's why you were kind of familiar with
Used
that
to
kind
it,
of
yeah,
operation.
exactly right. Yep. It was an awkward time of the day to arrive as well because they had quite a firm curfew, and they had all the guys coming across the Pacific who were generally pretty tight on gas arriving, and we were in comparison flush, and we all arrived just after 6 a.m. So it was all a bit of a bun fight.
So Ben goes on. For the incident, however, they were on 3-4 left right configuration, and this was on 3-4 right. The A330 likely on a Marub departure, and it was, which has a sharp right turn on departure to come back and then set course east. All RNAV now, but it's the equivalent of turning back to the 073 radial, if memory serves. So about 120 degrees right turn, then back left 30 degrees or so to get the outbound track. Captain Jeff, it doesn't sound bad until you read the time of the incident. This was in the dark, not the time you really want to be in unscheduled formation with a company heavy. And then, so I put a little note here that, in my opinion, the controller should have immediately issued vectors for one or both flights to keep them separated. Also, both flights' pilots should have been situationally aware of what was unfolding and should have had some sort of a plan in their minds to deal with the possibility of lack of separation. That is why I say that we, as pilots, should always be listening to everything going on the frequency, not just calls made to your flight. And also in this situation, if I remember correctly, Nick, it was a trainee controller, and perhaps the supervisor wanted to let this go a little bit further just to see how the trainee would handle it, and maybe he waited too long and to take control of the situation himself and start, giving vectors and stuff for the airplane, so they didn't get in the situation where they had a traffic alert and a potential conflict.
You're right, and having listened to, we were listening to AG earlier on, having listened to opposing bases and their show and their discussions about, the other voice that comes on sometimes when you hear the instructing air trafficker come and override something that the trainee has said. Then they say it's always terribly difficult. I think it's equally so in an aircraft, but generally we have a pretty good feeling for when somebody's made a bit of a mistake. I don't think it's necessarily quite as easy in the world of air traffic. So it really comes down to the ability of the instructor and his judgment. But I don't think it was done particularly well, obviously, here. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in this situation.
Just going up to Washington yesterday, I kind of sort of started to sense that the controller was a new person, perhaps somebody that was being trained, because his responses to people's communications was like slightly delayed, and then sometimes it didn't sound very confident. And I kind of said over to my first officer, I said, I think this is a trainee. And then all of a sudden, right after I said that, the supervisor gets on and just starts just issuing all these commands to all these different airplanes just to kind of straighten up the situation. And we just kind of looked at each other and went, yep, that's what was going on there. He let him go about as far as he could stand it. And he said, okay, I'm taking over, move.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's difficult because there's obviously a bit of a hit on the trainee's confidence, just as it would be for a pilot if you had to take over control and straighten things out. So
Right.
you never want to do that. You'd much rather they sold it themselves and kept their confidence level high, so they knew they could deal with the situation next time. So
Yep.
yeah, it's
I mean,
always
that's the best kind of training is, you making the mistakes and you learning from it, but as long as it doesn't end up hurting somebody else.
absolutely, yep.
Right. So thank you, Ben and Cameron. Again,
And you can keep your sub props to yourself next time.
Yeah. It's kind of rude of him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was dreadful.
Yeah. Item 3, Dave. He's the guy that sent us the
Pronouncing
video.
English town names.
Yes. Jeff, thanks for the segment on pronouncing English town names from my suggestion. It brought me more than a few laughs in this, not the best of times. I've encouraged Jade, she was a lady on the video, to via email to give you some audio feedback follow-up. I hope she does. Yeah, we haven't heard.
Excellent.
Liz, have we heard anything from Jade? No, we haven't heard anything from Jade. Not yet, anyway. And Jeff, P.S., you're a great sport. Listener Dave. Well, I do what I can to make it entertaining, Dave.
Yeah, I think you did a brave attempt at most of those, and I thought they were, generally speaking, pretty damn good.
Well, I think it's just because of the fact that I've been around people like you, Nick, and others in the UK. I'm learning as much as I can over time. And then speaking, one of the words that we had issues with, especially you, Nick, for a misspelling, was Worcestershire. Right? How did I do on that?
Yeah, I think you did very well. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Or Worcester. Anyway, maybe we should have somebody from Massachusetts, because this is from Dan in Worcester, Massachusetts. I think that Dana might be the best guy to handle his feedback.
Hey, I think so. Why wouldn't I? Except for one thing.
What?
I have my phone going here and it's not stopping.
That's
Stop.
Right. I'll fix
Shut
it in
up.
post.
There you go. Hold on. It's still going on. Why won't it pause? I don't get it. Stupid phones. I'm not talking to you. Shut up. All right. So, anyways, let's see. Open it up real quick. I'm sorry to step back up here. I was just checking on the progress down there. All right. I'm a new listener. This is Dan from the ORH airport code, and I'll reveal that here in a few moments. I'm a new listener to the show, and I'm loving it so far. It really brightens up my week. I'm sorry. Dan,
You must have a very sad week.
Yeah, it must be so sad. I do apologize, Dan. We are trying to do our best here, though. Given the recent discussions on the airport codes and the pronunciation of places in the UK and their US counterparts, I couldn't help but share this article from our local paper about the airport code for Worcester Regional Airport, which is ORH. Thank you so much for making such a great show. Wishing clear skies and tailwinds. Dan from Worcester, as we say in Boston. It's Worcester, not Worcester or Worcester. It's Worcester. Anyways, there's some up the the summary of the news article. I can't think properly here. The news article from Millbury came bearing question about the expanded service and tickets prices at Worcester Regional Airport. But then somebody asked the question, really, what's on people's mind? What is the Worcester Regional Code? ORH. Really?
No, why?
Why? Oh, yeah, I can't read. I can't read for some reason. Let me start that again in post. Okay. But then someone asked the question, really, what? I can't say it for some reason. I can't say that one line. But then someone asked the question, really, on people's minds.
No, but then someone asked the question, really, on people's minds.
Yeah, that's probably better, isn't it? Damn, what am I doing here?
Okay, take 4.
Take 4. But then someone asked the question really on people's minds. Why is Worcester Regional Airport's code ORH? A woman asked at the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce breakfast last month. The audience laughed. But the answer, at least an answer, bears a setting on the record. Worcester Regional Airport Director Andy Davis replied that the airport actually tried to get the DOT to change the airport's code to something more recognizable for Worcester. But regulators do not allow commercial airports to have their K or W as letter because radio station, well, K for U.S. airports, W for radio stations, and television stations are used for navigational aids. Mr. Davis said, and officials didn't want to confuse radio antennas with the airports. So we had to drop that first letter, Davis said. The next three letters in sequence, ORC, are already taken. And that looks like that's Orange City Municipal Airport near Sioux City, Iowa, which leads to the H, which, well, that's a matter of some speculation. The official explanation from the Federal Aviation Administration mentions the restrictions on the W's, on the letters W and K in line with Davis's explanation. The Federal Communications Commission restricts U.S. airport codes from beginning with the letter W and K, which we already talked about before, reserving them for radio station designation, and the FAA said. But the statement did not really address the H. With ORC or OR codes already taken, Worcester, WOR, opted for ORH. The statement reads, the only thing I can think of was some bureaucrat in Washington probably thought he was finding a 3-letter code for Worcester. And that's pretty much the end of it. So it's interesting. I never thought where ORH came from, but OR, I can get the OR from Worcester. But I think when I think of it and I see ORH, I think a lot of people want to say Worcester. And I'll never forget way back when I was working in a reservations call center, a lot of people call up and say, do you go to Worcester? And I would laugh, of course. So, yeah. So I think the H might be a phonetic issue there.
Or
I
it
think
could be
they
that
personally they should change the name of the airport to Auxville or something.
to match the code.
Yeah.
I think just basically this story brings the whole thing in a huge big circle, starting with that video on how to pronounce the names of English towns, villages, cities, that kind of thing, where Miss Jade apparently misspelled Worcester. There is no H in that, but she had it in there, and apparently the people that came up with this code thought that there was an H in this word as well. So
absolutely, I
think they should just ban the word Worcester, and just move on. Call it something else. Just kidding.
Yeah, and just leave the source.
Yeah, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. All right, thank you, Dana. Let's see. Continuing on with item 5, and this is from Boom Operator Chris. He says, "Hi there, Captain."
Boom operator.
Doom, 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 doom. Yeah, love it. Yeah, I don't think that's it. I think smooth operator. A smooth boom operator. Ooh. Hi there, Captain Jeff, Captain Dana, Captain Nick, and Dr. Steph. I'm a fairly new listener and found out about your podcast from those guys on the other side of the microphone that record from a mythical place that no one can figure out where it is. I've been listening for a few months now, and I fear I have developed the syndrome. I listen to the current and then slowly work my way back. The reason for my feedback today, other than to say I love the podcast and look forward to it every week, is, Captain Jeff, it seems you and my father share quite the same route when it comes to your careers. Both you and Captain Carl Rabe, both grew up in Los Alamitos. They joined the military. He went the Navy route and flew Hornets, then got hired by Acme and flew the panel on the 727. Moved on to the Mad Dog, and now finally for him, the 7576. He has one more year of flying left until the FAA, in their infinite wisdom, says he's too old. You could have crossed paths at some point as far back as the 70s and not even know it. Keep up the great work. I can't wait for each new podcast. Captain Jeff, Captain Dana, next time I'm in Alpharetta visiting family and neither of you are on a trip, dinner is on me. Captain Nick, unfortunately, I haven't been to the UK since I left the Air Force and miss visiting your beautiful country terribly, especially Mildenhall and Lakenheath. Hopefully someday I'll return to on my own dime. Dr. Steph, she's not here sadly, but she's probably already read this. Dr. Steph, if you ever find yourself back in Northern California, I will treat you to a tour of the Sierra Nevada Brewery and then a tasting of the wonderful IPAs they only have on tap. I wish you Kavu, strong tailwinds, and tasty IPAs. Again, boom operator Chris.
Sounds nice.
Very nice.
Wouldn't mind going to the brewery. That sounds really nice.
Now I can attest to the fact that that Steph has been to the Sierra Nevada Brewery in I forgot the exact name of the place, but it's near Hendersonville, not too far from Asheville. They have another big brewery and restaurant and that kind of thing there, kind of their East Coast operations center and brewing center. And I was the reason why I know it because I was there, and she and Justice and a few others were. I think actually Miami Rick was there as well. That was that time that I went up with, or Miami Rick and I went over to Charlotte and then joined Steph, and we drove in Steph's Jeep up to Asheville. So that was a lot of fun. But the one in
Was
Chico.
there some kind of beer drinking festival going on?
Yes, there was. It was,
and she was the only sober one there, and she drank you two under the table.
Yeah, that may or may not be true. Yeah, and I had a little stumble too. I injured myself, and it has nothing to do with the drinking. It had to do with the uneven.
No, of course not. No, we
yeah.
quite understand. Yeah,
that's
nothing at all.
Yeah, but yeah, it was like, what was it called? It was what's the kind of music that bluegrass. It was bluegrass music festival and a beer festival all combined, and I can't remember. They had a very cute name, and I just don't remember what it was. But it combined bluegrass and beer together for the festival. Anyway,
amazing. If you smoke bluegrass, does it stay in your lips?
Yeah, and it kind of tastes. It depends on the bluegrass. If it's in season, it's pretty tasty. But just kidding, of course.
Fair enough.
All right, Greg. I think we still have time. Yeah, we do. Wow, we're doing really well today. We're going to knock out a lot of feedback. Greg from the Big Ass Fan. Thank you, Liz. She remembers the name of the festival. It was Brewgrass instead of Bluegrass. Brew, B-R-E-W, grass. Isn't that clever?
She's smart.
Well, I mean, she's clever, but whoever came up with the name is also clever. Anyway, Greg from the Big Ass Fan Company writes, since I've officially fallen victim, I think maybe this is not Greg from, yes, it is. It is Greg from.
Yes, it is.
Okay, Greg Peterson. Okay. Since I've officially fallen victim to the APG syndrome, I've gone back and started listening to APG from episode 001, and that was like May of 2011. Somewhere around episode 8 or 9, Jeff asked what our favorite weather apps were. Since it's been almost 10 years since that episode was released, I thought I might resurrect the question and see what you guys thought about today's latest and greatest weather apps. A couple of my favorites are RadarScope and Windy. RadarScope is an app that pulls data directly from the National Weather Service NexRad sites and has an amazing amount of data from the radars. Windy has a great website that lets you look at weather at different altitudes. It seems like that would be great for pilots. By the way, Greg, they also have a great iOS app. I've recently ordered a WeatherFlow personal weather station for my house, and I look forward to using their app because their weather stations gather an enormous amount of data, which can then be published to the web for other folks to use. Here is a link to the WeatherFlow map of weather stations that you can access across the world. And then he gives us a link, which you can find if you look in our show notes. And he says, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Blue skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds unless you're landing. And big ass fans for everyone. Greg Peterson. Thank you, Greg. So I'll start because I was just mentioning that I do have the... Well, let me just tell you what I have on my iPhone as far as weather apps are concerned. The one that he mentions right off the bat, RadarScope. I do have that on my iPhone. I also, my favorite actually for radar is MyRadar, MyRadar. They have a free version, and then I think there are some in-app upgrades that you can pay to kind of have some more enhancements. And Storm Radar is another one that I have on here. Aero Weather, it's a free app. And again, you can upgrade if you like to have more functionality. But Aero Weather, which is AERO Weather.
I was going to say that one.
Oh, were you? I'm sorry. I should.
No, you carry
Okay,
on.
well, I'll let you talk about it.
No. I don't really have many anymore.
Tell me what you do have, so I don't duplicate your effort.
Well, one of the few I have is Dark Skies.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
really an aviation one, but very good if you want warning of a rain in your immediate area in the next hour. So if you're playing some sports or something and you want to know what if it's going to start raining, and it's usually pretty damn accurate, almost to the minute of starting and stopping. So that's a favorite of mine.
Yes, I have that also, Dark Sky. Each one of these apps has its like strengths and weaknesses, or it's best for this kind of, as you just mentioned, kind of if you want to know what's happening in your area, like an hour-to-hour forecast for when the rain's going to begin and end, that kind of thing. Dark Sky is great. Also, they have a web presence, forecast.io, is if you want to look it up on your web browser. And so let's see. Aero Weather is basically something that we pilots are very familiar with. Looks like my picture went off behind me, didn't it? Why does it do that? I guess it must have a certain amount of time, and then it just gives up. So let me do something different here.
Yeah, the nice thing about Aero Weather, from my point of view, was that I could set up a sort of route across the world that I was going to do, and I could pick all the airfields that I was likely to want to know en route, and download them all before I got airborne, and so they were all there ready, and it just allowed me to pre-flight, do some pre-flight work before I got in, because for us it was only an hour and a half or an hour 20 to do all the paperwork and wind the airplane up and get off. So anything you could do, on the journey from the hotel to the airport. Excuse me.
That's that beer.
No.
Stop drinking that tea.
There you go. There you go. You get the
That's good.
Hey, so my thoughts are, I don't know about you, Jeff, but for me, I mean, it's kind of rapid fire. There are a couple things that I use. I use our application at work that shows us our turbulence.
Yeah.
I use that. I'm not using the name on purpose. But it also has the radar embedded into it. So I have a really good picture of what our route looks like, where we're going, how we're getting there, and what the weather's really looking like where we're going en route, of course. My personal, I have my radar. I happen to like that app quite a bit. And somebody's opening up my garage. Storm Radar is another one that I use, and that's put out by the Weather Channel. Of course, sometimes I just use the general app, the Weather Channel. I don't look at the aviation apps because I find that, I don't look at the hourly stuff very closely because I don't want to lean on it too much because it's not approved. Right. So I go to our approved weather sources, and that's what I look at. Just so I can get a high level view, I use those general apps for my information.
Well, I use the official apps, and because we're required to, or official sources. But I also supplement with a lot of the National Weather Service sourced stuff. Anyway, going back to Aero Weather, it's basically for you pilots out there. It's and of course, if you're a pilot, you probably already have this on your smart device. But it gives you the METAR, and it also gives you the TAF. And one of the nice things about it is that you can select to have everything not in the raw mode, but in a interpreted mode. So instead of trying to figure out the time, whether it's Z time or your local time, it gives it to you in local time, and it gives you it in like regular English, so you can understand what it is that the TAF and the METAR is saying. So anyway, very handy to have. I also have I basically made it a web app. It's basically a web page from Safari on my phone, and it's the Aviation Weather Center from the National Oceanographic and what's the NOAA stand for? National
Oceanic
Oceanographic and
Atmospheric
Agency.
Atmospheric.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They have a great section called convection, and in the convection section, they have all the SIGMATs. They have the TCF. They have the ECPFP, which is the extended convective forecast plot. It has the convective outlook, and has the severe storms center watch warning. So it has all kinds of stuff to see in there, as well as the individual radar sites, the NEXRAD radars, and then when you're on those particular pages, then you can specify what kind of display you'd like from that NEXRAD site, echo tops or whatever. Lots of information there. The one that I've been really geeking out with lately. Oh, and by the way, Greg, Windy is a great app. I mean, a great website, but they also have an app. I don't know if that's a recent thing, but I have that on my phone and use it quite a bit. Another one's called Ventusky, Ventusky. Gives you a lot of information that a lot of the other apps don't. But the one that really is super geeky, and I think Steph would really appreciate, because she's kind of into meteorology, weather. It's easier for me to say that. Is I've set it up as a web app, but it's actually a website called Tropical Tidbits, and it has the long-range models for the GFS and the European models for like up to, I don't know, 72 hours or more. And it also has a short-term plus 17-hour range on the high-resolution radar. It's HRRR. I forget what that stands for, but it gives you an hour-by-hour plot of where the weather systems are going to be. And so I'll go in there and go, okay, I'm supposed to arrive in St. Louis at 4 o'clock, and then I can go through there and see exactly what this thing is the modeling is for when that storm system is going to be going through, or if it's going to be past, that kind of thing. So there's so much information out there. That's just a little bit of what I look at, because I'm kind of a weather geek myself. So let's see. Liz says, if you want to see some information about live lightning strikes, you can go to Blitzortung Live. Am I pronouncing that right, Liz? Okay, she's nodding her head yes. By the way, the Windy app has a really cool display of lightning strikes. It's very, very cool the way they present it. Anyway, so much stuff out there. Most of these things are using data from the same sources, so it just presents it in different ways. So that should be enough to get everybody going, at least. And thank you, Greg, for asking the question. All right. Let's see. I think we're still good as far as continuing with feedback. Yeah, okay. Item number 7, Kevin. I'm currently an episode behind, so I don't know if this has already been answered or not, but on episode 410, there was some feedback asking about empty airports when viewed from Google Maps. Yeah, you remember that? We were trying to figure out why.
Yeah, we saw the shadow of the Millennium Falcon on the ground, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I recently observed the same phenomenon when looking at KATL on Google Maps. I know ATL is never empty, and I got to doing some research. From what I was able to find out, it seems Google is making use of an algorithm that removes non-static objects from their maps. The intent for this seems to be to remove things like cars and people from the roadway, sidewalks, and parking lots, so that the map is easier to observe with less clutter. Unfortunately, this has the side effect of removing planes from the tarmac. While it doesn't seem to affect every airport, there are too many for it to be a coincidence of just being the wrong time of day for the pictures, which is a shame because as an aviation enthusiast and a map nerd, one of my favorite ways to kill time at work is to see what unique and interesting planes I can find. Anyhow, if this has already been answered by another listener, please disregard. Nope, you're the first. Thank you, Kevin. As always, thank you for the wonderful podcast. It makes my commute in Atlanta traffic much more bearable. Clear skies and tailwinds. And again, that's
Oh,
from
that's
Kevin.
brilliant, Kevin. Thanks for that, because we were wondering about that, and I was scratching my head trying to work it out. That's clever.
And that makes sense because, some of the ones that we actually did see that were kind of parked in kind of obscure locations on the airport and we could see them on the picture. Well, it makes sense. If they weren't moving, then they're going to stay in the picture, right? The algorithm won't remove them. But all the other ones, like the main gates at the main terminals or concourses, yeah, it makes sense. They're not going to be there for a super long time. And if it's comparing one frame to another frame, it's going to go, okay, that's not something that's there all the time. So I'm going to just leave it out of the picture.
To me,
exactly.
it's just amazing with technology and how fast it's progressing that it's able to do that now. It's great. It's just amazing to me.
It is.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Well, speaking of technology and even, I don't know if you go even more into it, science fiction, Texas Anlashok writes in, and he's named his note Sci-Fly. Nick, do you want to? I think you'd be best to answer this because I think you're more into some of these sci-fi things.
Well,
than-
I've had an interest. I'm by all
Yeah.
means, by no means an expert, but he writes and says, "Greetings, Captain Jeff and APG crew. You have no idea how much Captain Nick absolutely floored me. Bang! When he said he was familiar with Mass Effect. I would never have guessed. Firefly I could see, but for some reason not Mass Effect. My apologies. We ought to find some place where we can compare any other potential sci-fi interests. But since we're on the subject, out of any sci-fi works, you may be familiar with which ships, planes, or other craft you think would be the most fun to fly. And I've had to think about this, and I hope you guys have as well. But funny, you should mention it, Texas and a shock, but Serenity would have been my choice. So Serenity is a Firefly class spacecraft, an O3K-64 Firefly, a mid-bulk transport, Class B, with a standard radiation accelerator core. In fact, it was powered by two Blue Sun CV4178B31 trace compressor block and 36 RCS thrusters. So it was, the thing I like about it is that it's pretty flexible airplane or a space ship. It can come into the atmosphere and it can also do fairly long space journeys. And it's about the same size as an A340. So it's about had a wingspan which is considerably shorter. You don't really need wings, do you? But its length is about 269 feet. That's very close. Just a little bit longer than A340. Its weight is maximum weight. Where we go? Here we go. 128 metric tons, which is very close to the A340-300. So I thought that was a very nice choice. Great fun looking airplane. The only thing I have against it was that the flight deck is pretty much bowing. So the pilot's chairs and the bridge have sort of Boeing signature sheepskin covers, and the throttle quadrants definitely Boeing style, as are the control yokes, but I'll forgive them that.
I thought you said boring.
No, Boeing.
Boeing, gotcha. Boeing.
So that's my choice. How about you guys?
Well, now in his feedback, he says something about the Carillion YT-1300 freighter. Is that also a Star Wars thing?
No, that's. I think that is probably Babylon 5.
Oh, okay. Because I did not recognize that at all. Thinking I don't know what that is. I don't have a huge depth of knowledge when it comes to sci-fi, spaceships, fighters, that kind of thing. So I'll just say maybe kind of old school. The original Star Trek Enterprise would be kind of cool.
Very good. Yes. Okay.
And then the other one that's kind of a more modern version of that same sort of show called the Orville.
Yes.
Which is it would be kind of a fun thing maybe to take a whirl in.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's the only couple that I can think of. Right
You a sci-fi man, Dana?
I am not. Well, I like sci-fi, but I'm not a big fan. Good enough to know what I would like. I mean, of course, growing up as a child watching Star Wars, and it's almost cliche, but the Millennium Falcon was always my fave.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, funny enough, he carries on. It reminds me, someone from the Airplane Geeks was at Disney World a while back, and apparently you can get checked out as a pilot on the Millennium Falcon. Anyone care to be certified on a Carillion YT 1300 freighter? For me, I think the most fun craft to fly would be the Earth Force Star Fury Space Superiority Fighter. If you don't know what I'm talking about, he's linking a short video, gives you an overview of them from the channel Space Doc, which I think is a must-see for any sci-fi fans, as they cover ships and vehicles from just about any franchise. In the real world, you may or may not have covered this news segment, but we have a new airline in the United States, formerly known as Moxie, but now unveiled as Breeze Airways. I'm sure I care. Oh, sorry, not sure I care for the name or the livery, but I do find the concept interesting. If their aim is to serve high demand secondary markets, I have hopes that there might be a new airline serving my hometown of Midland, Texas. It's a smaller area, but there's been a ton of growth out there, to the point that the airlines that currently fly there have been increasing their flights, and in some cases up gauging their equipment. Southwest,
she
of
said.
course.
Sorry.
I could do with some of that. Southwest, of course, already flies mainline jets in, but American and United usually fly CRJs in. But we're seeing the occasional 737 or A320 showing up there. Anyway, that's all for now. Talk to you all another time. This is the Texas and LaShock signing off.
Excellent.
Good piece.
Yeah. I was going to say something. Oh, we know somebody. He was talking about that the Disney thing where you can log some time on the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
We know somebody somewhat sort of prominent in the APG community, Stephen Ivy,
Really?
that just logged some time. He's been on a little bit of a vacation out in California, and I think he went to Disneyland and logged some time. Yeah, so he has some Millennium Falcon time in his logbook.
Yeah, brilliant, wouldn't it? You just got to do that.
Yeah, that's funny.
Okay.
Did he do the Kessel run in 12 parsecs? I have to ask myself.
I don't know. I have no idea what that means. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to decide. I think we can knock this one out. What's that?
Go and put Nick's plane tails on.
No, not yet. We still have about 10 minutes. So
okay.
Number 9 from Derek. He says, "Hello, everyone. Derek here from the UK. I'm sure you've seen some of the YouTube clips of the recent crosswind landings when Storm Kira, or some people pronounce it Sierra, but I think it's an Irish name, and I know somebody who named their daughter Kira, and that's at least the way they pronounced it, passed through northern Europe on Sunday, the 9th of January. Some planes took 3 or 4 attempts to land at airports around Europe, and in some cases, some aircraft even totally aborted and returned to their original place of departure. I'm curious as to how these pilots and airlines plan for this. The storm that was the worst in the UK for years was well predicted days in advance, and many other forms of public transport were canceled 24 hours beforehand. Now I know I don't know how to fly an airliner, and I have the utmost respect for the pilots. But to me, there must be a safety limit, and I was surprised they did not completely shut the airports affected down. I think, 50% of flights were canceled, so why some and not others? To me, the risk was far too high, but I'm sure they would not attempt the landings if it was that dangerous. If I was on one of those planes, I would certainly be praying. I wanted your views on this. Thank you all for the amazing show. I've been listening now since episode 77. Woo, that's a long time. And always look forward to it. And so, of course, he has a bunch of links for us to look at regarding this incident. And I'm sure that most of the people that listen to aviation podcasts have already seen a clip of this Etihad A380 coming in for landing at Heathrow during Storm Kira. and it is an interesting landing, I'd say. Now, for me, I've always thought that when looking at videos of this sort of thing, and now I understand that. What's the effect called again, Nick, when you are taking a telephoto shot from quite a distance and
Foreshortening.
foreshortening? So I think that has probably something to do with how crazy some of these landings look and the crab angles that they're coming in on and what happens as soon as they touch down and the fuselage, or basically the landing gear, aligns the fuselage with the longitudinal axis of the runway and that sort of thing. I'm sure that's part of it. But I've always kind of been amazed that some people don't even make any attempt whatsoever to try to straighten out the fuselage before touchdown. And I mean, we've had this discussion on the show before where I found some information from Boeing that basically said that the airplanes were designed to, or stressed, the landing gear stressed so that they can land in up to the maximum demonstrated crosswind, and without taking out any of the crab angle. And they said except for their their Long Beach products. So, in other words, the McDonnell Douglas products they can't vouch for because they obviously didn't make them.
Yeah, the wheels are going to fall off those ones.
Right, probably so. So anyway, we do have some tweets from Captain Dave, who is an Airbus A380 pilot. He says, "Pardon me if I'm a little careful in what I say. Firstly, everyone was safe. This is not the normal technique for landing an A380, as the sideways crab should be removed using rudder before touchdown." So I'm glad that I saw that from him. Not doing so causes the large swing after touchdown, but everyone was safe. He goes on to say, the correct technique is to remove the drift on all landings before touchdown. The undercarriage is designed to cope with that not happening, but landing with the crab still on is not the correct technique. Secondly, all airlines train the techniques for maneuvers such as this in the way the aircraft manufacturers specify. Each airline may modify certain procedures to fit in with their standard operating procedures, but not basic techniques such as landing, etc. So that's what he has to say from the outfit that he flies for. Again, that's Captain Dave on Twitter. Another thing that I saw out there that I thought was kind of interesting, the title of the article from, let's see, where was this from? Oh, shoot, I don't remember exactly where I got this. I think it was another tweet.
Yeah, that's another tweet.
Okay. And it says, ouch, Etihad criticizes A380 pilots for viral crosswind landing. Oh, from 1 Mile at a Time blog. I even put it in there. I didn't see it. Many of you probably have seen the viral video of an Etihad 380 landing at Heathrow during Storm Dennis. Oh, wait, no, I think he's wrong about that. Wasn't it Kira? Or was it
I
Dennis?
thought it was Kira. But,
Yeah. Anyway, there have been tons of crosswind landing videos that have emerged as a result of the strong winds in the UK, though this one went most viral. Interestingly, the video doesn't show that much of a struggle to get to the touchdown point, but what makes this video so shocking to people is the angle at which the plane touches down and the extent to which it makes adjustments after landing. And then he gives a link to the video. Almost across the board, you see praise for these pilots for the landing. Yeah, on Twitter. Well, Etihad seems to disagree. Let's see, Paddle Your Own Canoe, I guess that's somebody's Twitter handle, notes the contents of a leaked memo that was sent out by Etihad's pilot training department to pilots following this video going viral. And then I said, actually, I believe this was meant for training pilots at Etihad, not all their pilot group. The memo was sent out by Etihad's manager of pilot training. The memo references, quote, a video this week of one of our A380s landing in a strong crosswind in London, and states the following with regards to it. Quote, this official view from the training department is a simple one. And in all caps, this is not what we want to see. There is a time to give an approach away in the interest of safety. And so I suppose that he means, in other words, go around and try it again.
Yep.
If you see such a thing in the sim, aircraft simulator, that would be a grade 1 for both pilots. So I'm assuming that grade 1 must mean the lowest grade, Nick?
Yeah, it would be the other way around in my outfit. So if
Yeah,
I
I
got
think-
grade 1, I'd be going, woo!
Yeah, I know. I think, woohoo, yes.
Yes, got that
So
one.
I gather from the context that it's not a very good thing. And it says, please, gentlemen, let's teach our pilots to operate safely, even if that means changing the mission. And then this guy
Now,
goes
I can
on to say,
see why that would be a Boeing guy, because they might have a combined training department with pilots from all fleets, and or it might have been written by the Airbus training guys, but just released by whoever's the head of training, which could well be a Boeing pilot. So
yeah, that I
don't
kind of
think-
left that part out of the reading
Yeah,
this.
I don't think
it
you
said-
need to read anything into
Yeah,
that.
the memo was sent out by Eddie Hod's manager of pilot training for the Boeing fleet, which seems odd. The plane in question is an Airbus, so
Yeah.
that straightens it out. Nick, thank you. Anyway, ouch. Beyond that, I also find it inappropriate that he refers to pilots as gentlemen. Come on, you should know better than that. And then I said, well, I don't think that this was sent out to the entire pilot group. I think it was just sent out to the pilots that are in the training department. And at Eddie Hod, that might be just males. That's what I'm guessing. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't think we should get too upset about that.
I'm going to point out that on the 340, our training manual said we had to take out at least 50% of the drift. So I tried to take out as much as possible, but if it was a really bad wind and you had a lot of drift to kick off, the aircraft takes considerable amount of time to bring the nose round, and if you got at least half of it around, then I was content that was going to be okay on the gear. But no, you're right. When you, particularly if it's a dry runway, if you land fully crabbed, the airplane does lurch horribly, and it feels very uncomfortable. And as we know, our job is not only to fly the airplane safely, to make as comfortable for our passengers as we can. So I would also have criticized that technique, because once the airplane went down, it lurched about on the runway quite horribly.
Yes, it did. And, you have to also point out that it's a little bit more difficult for airplanes such as the A340, the 330, the 380, the 76, 777, all airplanes that have wing-mounted engines. It's critical that, to compensate for that drift, once you take out some of that crab, you're going to have to put some bank in, and you have to be careful because you could smack one of those engine cowlings.
Yeah,
or
we
bombs.
don't teach that at all. So
Okay.
the
No
idea
bank
is
at all?
the idea is to, if you're going to kick off drift, to start on the upwind side of the runway.
Okay.
So that having straightened the airplane up, as the airplane starts to slide across in the crosswind, now it's got a grip of you, you land on the center line, which was why I was making comments the other day about a guy saying, what a perfect crosswind landing. I was saying, no, he was the cockpit was on the center line. You don't want the cockpit on the center line on a severe crosswind. You want the cockpit, in some cases, on the A340, which is a very long airplane, nearly over the grass on the upwind side. Now, as you swing the airplane straight, the cockpit will come around, and then as the airplane drifts, before you get the wheels on, you'll still have plenty of runway laterally to put it down on.
Yeah, no, for an airplane such as the one Dana and I fly, we can put in some bank, although we do have to, there's a limit to that, because we don't have to worry about hitting the engine pod on the wing, but we do have to worry about hitting the wing tip. And there's a certain pitch angle and bank angle combination, again, depending on your pitch angle when you touch down, where that may happen. So, you have to think about that when you're landing in a very strong crosswind. But I guess my point about all of this is that I always kind of marvel at non-pilots, especially non-airline pilots, their comments. Oh, that was the best landing I've ever seen in my life. And then most of us go, no, that was not a good landing at all. That was horrible. And they're heroes that they were able to let. No. I mean, the guy didn't even, or the person flying that airplane seems that they made no attempt whatsoever to take out any of the crab before touchdown. At least try to take a little bit out, right?
The one that I always laugh at. Were you a Navy pilot?
Oh yeah, that never.
Was that an aircraft landing?
Yeah,
aircraft carrier landing. No.
So Liz added a YouTube video at the last minute, which you'll be able to see in the show notes. There's on these airplanes. I don't know if they're on all the A380s or just Etihads. I think probably all of them. There's a camera on the tail. You had one too, didn't you, Nick, on the 340?
Yeah, on the 340, but not every airline pipes it into the passenger's entertainment system.
So this person apparently Etihad does, and this guy was in the airplane initially taking video from outside the side window on the left side, and then he kind of points his camera as they get closer and closer to touchdown to the tail-mounted view, tail-mounted camera view. And honestly, I have to say that when I saw it from that perspective, it didn't look as bad as it did on the video that everybody was going crazy in, the video that went viral with the head-on view from quite a distance. It was much more, I don't know, shocking to me, that view. But the tail-mounted camera view, I'm thinking, well, there wasn't as much crab as I thought, and it doesn't look like it was that violent of a straightening after the thing touched down. But again, maybe there are some things in that video that take out the severity or whatever of the landing itself. Were you able to see that, Nick?
Yes, I did. I must admit, thought it did look quite benign, but there were actually a few exclamations in the background from the passengers. So I don't think, yeah. And I think from the outside view, you did see the wings flex and the airplane twist as the airframe absorbed all that energy. And that's what made it look a bit ugly from the outside. I think probably on the inside with, 200 odd, 300 tons, it's not going to, feel that bad, perhaps. Big airplane.
Right. Yeah. So, basically, bottom line, it wasn't a textbook landing, and the conditions were tough, but it was enough concern that even the training, if the memo is actually real that we're talking about here, it was of some concern from certain people in the airline, and at least one professional 380 airline pilot that has a very popular Twitter feed. So there you go. So thank you, Derek, for mentioning it, and I think,
and of course, we have a 380 captain, Stefan, who's a regular.
Yes,
and he might want to just fire up some feedback at us, Stefan, if you get to this.
Yes, Stefan, fire it up, send it in, and go ahead and throw in a bottle or two of gin soul with that as well, if you don't mind.
You'll be sure to get your feedback.
I'm out. I'm looking at my bottle over here. And
I'm going to Hamburg in a couple of weeks. I'm going to buy some.
Please do. Buy a whole case. All right. And then I'll make a visit.
Well, sure.
Okay. Now it's time for the best part of the show, which, of course, everybody knows is the old pilot's plain tale. And here we go. This one is Buckeye 2.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales, Buckeye 2. VA 859 was called to active duty in 1951. For those not familiar with the US Navy, the designation VA refers to the unit's role as a fixed-wing attack squadron. A little while later, it was designated Attack Squadron 85, and it served with great distinction for 43 years, fighting in the Vietnam and Iraq wars, as well as other important duties, such as covering US Marine landings in Lebanon and carrying out airstrikes over Syria, Bosnia, and Libya, to name just a few. The squadron initially flew Sky Raiders, but in 1954 it had moved on to the extremely capable A6 Intruder. On its aircraft's tails, it bore the squadron's insignia, a black falcon. The 85th's illustrious history had its fair share of heroes, but one of its members was awarded the Navy Cross, the United States' second highest decoration for valor in combat and awarded for extraordinary heroism. Only the Medal of Honor has precedence over this award. This is the story. The A6 flew some of the most challenging missions going in Vietnam. The nature of the intruder and its role, flying low-altitude attacks in foul conditions and often alone, led to what had been described as an A6 particular loss, where no one could truly establish the circumstances, and there was a disproportionate number of A6 crews on the missing in action list. When the Black Falcons entered the fray aboard USS Kitty Hawk in 1964, this was their very first deployment with the intruder. The Buckeyes, as they were also known, got off to a troubled start with their new aircraft whilst converting in California, with the loss of 2 intruders in a mid-air collision. Although they were not yet to know it, they were going to suffer more losses. Their CO was killed during a night strike north of Haiphong, along with his BN, his bombardier navigator. And only a couple of months later, another aircraft failed to return after attacking a group of trucks. Then a third machine was destroyed when it was hit by AAA, but at least the crew were found and rescued. The squadron had their successes as well, but the losses would continue when 4 months after the CO had been killed, his replacement died during a night strike near Vinh. This made the second CO that they had lost on this deployment and the third since they had started flying the A6. The following day, another aircraft went down on an anti-SAM mission, and then it was the turn of the new CO to get airborne in Buckeye 1 with Lieutenants Bill Westerman, pilot, and Brian Westin, BN, in Buckeye 2 on his wing. They were scheduled for a reconnaissance flight down a road in Route Package 2. A route package was the name given to describe one of 7 numbered areas in North Vietnam that were used to deconflict between air operations being conducted by different arms of the US military. Out of interest, RP-6 was considered the most dangerous airspace in the world. It covered both Hanoi and Haiphong. When the air war started, the entire North Vietnamese air defense system contained only 22 early warning radars and 4 fire control radars with 700 anti-aircraft guns. By 1967-68, North Vietnam was firing 25,000 tons of anti-aircraft ammunition a month, and their equipment had grown to 400 radar sites, over 8,000 anti-aircraft guns, 150 fighters, and 200 SA-2 surface-to-air missile sites around the country. Buckeye 1 and 2 were to be armed with Mark 82 500-pound bombs, but just before they manned their aircraft, the ship received a report that a mass of barges had been discovered near the mouth of the Ven River. The staff of Carrier Task Force 77, apparently short of officers experienced in TAC Air, tactical aviation, changed the formation's weapon load to napalm and ordered them to attack the barges. The A6 crews were delighted with the new target, but screamed blue murder about the change in weapons, but to no avail. The crew were rightfully concerned because, in those days, napalm had to be dropped from low altitude and airspeed to successfully detonate. This was going to make them vulnerable. They climbed aboard their aircraft, started and taxied the short distance out to the catapult launcher. In turn, they lined up, the hold bar was put in place and the bridle connected to the aircraft. Below the deck, the steam pressure built behind the huge piston connected to the shuttle in the track in front of the intruder. With their Pratt & Whitney J-52 turbojets blowing 18,000 pounds of thrust into the blast screen, the crew saluted and prepared for the launch. When the moment came, the aircraft took just 250 feet to accelerate to 140 knots, and then they were off the deck and climbing away. Once they reached their rendezvous point, they prepared to head for the target. There was just one little snag. In Buckeye 2, every time Brian, the BN, tried to talk to his pilot on the intercom, he also transmitted on the radio. It was only considered a minor annoyance, so they turned towards the enemy. The two intruders had briefed an attack that had the lead going in first, followed by his number 2 in loose trail, making an independent run. It didn't take long to get to the target. It was only 2 or 3 miles inland, and the barges were there, ripe for destruction. Buckeye 1 made his pass, and the napalm canisters tumbled off his aircraft down towards the mass of boats. When they hit, the sticky fuel burst out into a vast cloud, and then the ignition charge fired, creating a huge fireball that engulfed the target, setting much of it alight. Bill Westerman lined his A6 up with the barges. There was no missing the location. The fireball in front, which marked the target, was slowly shrinking as he descended down to his release height. The water of the delta glistened below as he rushed over the mud banks and swampy vegetation. He began to line his sights up on the target when there was a loud bang from the front of the aircraft, and Bill felt a blow to his shoulder. He instinctively pulled back on the stick, and Brian beside him keyed his intercom and shouted, "Are you hit?" His words came out on the radio as well, and for a moment the lead aircraft thought that he was talking to them. Just as they were about to reply, they heard the Mayday call. Bill was trying to fly his aircraft, and Brian was telling him to stay down out of the danger height for SAMs, but Bill was in trouble. He was feeling nauseous, and then things began to go dark. In the A6, the pilot and his BN sit side by side, with the pilot on the left, but there was only one set of flying controls. Brian, the BN, sat a little below his pilot on the right, and in front of him were the sophisticated weapon controls and the synthetic radar terrain display that he needed to do his job. The one thing he didn't have were any flying controls. As Brian slumped, Bill reached over and grabbed the stick. He wasn't trained to fly the aircraft, but he knew enough to keep them airborne, even though he was flying by leaning across the cockpit. He put out a mayday call and then clumsily turned the intruder out towards the Tonkin Gulf. In a field behind them, near the barges, a farmer lowered his old .303 rifle. He had fired a couple of times at the attacking A6s, but had no idea if he had hit them. He was pleased, though, when they veered away. He slung his rifle back over his shoulder and went on with his work. What he didn't know was that one of his rounds had been right on target. The bullet hit the lower left corner of Buckeye 2's canopy and penetrated. It would have probably been a clean wound, but the round shattered against one of Bill Westerman's cock fasteners that connected his body harness to his parachute. The bullet debris ripped the left side of Bill's chest open behind his armpit, glanced off his ribs, barely missing his heart, and leaving his arm and hand unusable. Bright red blood sprayed from the wound all over the cockpit, and his vision blurred and then narrowed whilst waves of pain flowed through his body. Wiping the blood from his face and seeing his pilot going in and out of consciousness, Brian kept the aircraft under control. He remembered the little bottle of flight surgeon's brandy in his nav bag, and grabbing it, he broke it open, and after feeding it to Bill, revived him enough to get his attention. The closest airfield was Da Nang, but flying that far was out of the question, as was landing back on the Kitty Hawk. Brian could see that Bill wasn't going to last long without serious medical help, as shock was setting in. Their only option was to abandon the aircraft, but at that time the A6 didn't have command eject, and it was usually the BN's job to eject first. Bill ordered him out, but Brian refused. He didn't want Bill to fall unconscious while on his own in the aircraft, so he insisted that the pilot go first. In the meantime, Buckeye 1 was racing up towards their stricken wingman, and as they approached, they watched the canopy come flying off the A6, shortly followed by an ejector seat. It was like the intruder stopped in midair, and Buckeye 1 sailed past. After the violence of Bill's ejection, and with the slipstream buffeting him, Brian tried to get the A6 back under control. He eventually gave up, and with the aircraft descending through 1,000 feet, he pulled his ejector seat handle. He was immediately hit by the 18G force of the main seat gun firing, and within a second or two he was gently floating down towards the water beneath his parachute. Buckeye 1 had turned back hard to find their wingman. They had only seen one ejection, and spotting only one dinghy not far from the impact point, made when Buckeye 2 hit the water, they assumed that Bill hadn't made it. By now, a flight of rescue CAPS SPADs, Sky Raiders that is, arrived to relieve Buckeye 1, who turned towards the carrier. The SPADs began doing their job. They tried mustering help for the downed crew, and a VIP-configured SH-3 Sea King helicopter, which had been monitoring the search and rescue frequency, responded immediately. Tuning their ADF box to 282.8, they followed the needle as they descended down towards the crash site. After just a few minutes, they hove into view, and spying Brian's green sea-dye marker and his orange dinghy, they circled, went into a hover, and dropped a strop down to him. As soon as he was dragged into the helicopter, Brian shucked his cumbersome water wings and made a beeline for the cockpit. Shouting over the noise, he told the crew that his wounded pilot had ejected first and was in the water a few miles closer to the coast. Hearing the news, the SPAD started searching, but spotting the pilot wasn't going to be easy. The leader was coming up to the mudbanks in the estuary when he thought someone was shooting at him as a tracer round flashed past his nose. He dropped his wings and looked down into the eyes of Bill Westerman, who was floating in red-stained water beneath him. Frustrated by all the aerial activity within a few miles, Bill had managed to use his one good arm to lever his pencil-sized flare gun out and carefully screw a mini-flare onto the top. As soon as someone came close, he took aim and fired, nearly hitting the SPAD. Soon the Sea King was over the spot, and they lowered the strop, but it quickly became obvious that the injured pilot couldn't climb into it. The VIP helicopter had no swimmer on board to help, so without a moment's thought, Brian jumped back into the water. He unhooked the horse collar that Bill couldn't use, which promptly sank, and then used the hook to attach Bill's harness to the wire. Within moments, the now unconscious pilot was safely aboard, and the wire came back down, but since Brian had shucked off his harness earlier, he had no way of attaching himself to it. He knew Bill needed medical help soon, so he waved the helicopter away, and was soon alone in the water again. Treading water and watching the fins of sharks attracted by Bill's blood circle around, he had a chance to ponder his impulsive actions. Brian was tiring and finding it hard to keep his head up, but then he remembered some wise words from his survival training officer, and he reached down to undo his G-suit. Once he got it off, he blew into the hose and inflated it enough to keep his head above water, and, just as importantly, with all the sharks around, his legs up. In the nick of time, a UH-2 Sea Sprite search and rescue helicopter arrived on the scene, and the SPADs gratefully turned the rescue of the poor BN over to them. They were just in time, as the sharks weren't the only threat. Hostile boats were closing in fast, and it was with a sigh of relief that Brian Westin was hauled up into the helicopter cabin. Although it was touch and go, the injured pilot, Bill Westerman, survived and went on to have a distinguished Navy career. The Apart from his Purple Heart, he was awarded 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses and 6 Air Medals. His Navy tours of duty included the aircraft carriers Forrestal, Independence, Kitty Hawk, John F. Kennedy, and Dwight D. Eisenhower, from which he flew the A4, A6, F4, F-14, F-18, and S-3. He rose to the rank of captain, and after his service worked for McDonnell Douglas and Boeing. In 2006, he was inducted into the Golden Eagles, the Naval Aviation Association, which he considered his highest honor. He passed away in 2010. For his actions during the Vietnam War, Brian Westin was awarded the Navy Cross. Part of his citation states, Lieutenant Junior Grade Westin waved the helicopter off and remained in the shark-infested water until the arrival of a second rescue helicopter. Through his quick thinking, cool courage, and selflessness in the face of grave personal risk, he was directly responsible for saving the life of his pilot. His heroic efforts were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service.
Another fantastic plain tale. Wow, what a story. And talking about dedication and loyalty to your fellow soldier.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was absolutely fabulous story. And thanks very much indeed to Blaster Bill, who was kind enough to point me at the direction of that one. And I don't know an awful lot about naval flying, even though I've flown 2 fighters that were primarily carrier-based, so the F4 and the F-18. It's a bit of a mystery to me what happens on board a carrier. So I was reliant very much on some very good recollections from Navy pilots, and also some assistance from some friends of Blaster Bill who were able to check my facts. So thanks very much for that. But that's a fabulous story, isn't it? It really is good. I love the fact that this fine chap was happy to jump it back into the water, having been rescued once, to put himself back in harm's way to save his pilot. What a marvelous chap he is.
Yes, very much so. Oh, right. Well, well done, sir, and look forward to the next installment.
Yeah, next one's almost written.
Oh, that's great. I was going to say, I don't have any naval flying experience either. Naval gazing experience, yes.
And funny enough, actually, I'm sticking on a naval theme, because we're going to be talking about the F-14 and a bit of Top Gun stuff on the next one.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Look forward to that. Let's see. How about item 10? And Nick, I think that this would be a good one for you.
Yeah, I think so too. It's an Airbus news story, so
Yeah.
I'm always up for a bit of that. And it's from one of our patrons, Aaron Kiefer, who's a private ASEL and a glider pilot, working on his instrument rating. So good luck there. So he says, hey team, I would like to know what you think. Is this just an out there idea that unlikely will ever come to fruition, or is this potentially the first glimpse into real airliners of the future? As it appears Airbus is putting real research into that. And he points us at an Airbus article saying Airbus, well, it's actually from Reuters, I should say, from Singapore, and Airbus unveils the blended wing body plane design after secret test flights. Apparently on Tuesday, it doesn't say which Tuesday, so I'll have to try and work that out.
No, Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, that day after Monday. They unveiled a curvaceous aircraft design. Well, we like curvaceous. It's almost as nice as moist. That blends wing and body, designed to slash carbon emissions by some 20%. Now, that would be an impressive feat. The European plane maker has been carrying out test flights of a 3.2 meter wide, that's about 10.5 feet for those of you who are in the dark ages, technology demonstrator, code named with my next plane tale in mind, Maverick, at a secret location in Central France since last year. It lifted the veil on the design at the Singapore Air Show. So the concept of a blended wing body design has been around since the 40s and led to the US B-2 bomber, as well as the X-48 research project between Boeing and NASA a decade ago. Such aircraft are complex to control. Well, I'm not so sure, since the flight control system would probably be very similar to that of Concorde and the Vulcan V bomber, which was flying around, and a lot of Mirages and other Deltas. Complex to to control, but produce less aerodynamic drag, making them more efficient to fly. I suspect most of the aerodynamic drag efficiency comes from the lack of interference drag. Anytime you get two surfaces on an aircraft meeting at a sharp angle, the airflow between the two of them, where they join, will create a lot of interference drag and create vortices and be a pull on the aircraft. Now, blended body is incredibly smooth. About the only places you'll get interference drag are from where the fins join onto the back of the fuselage. They jut out at right angles, and that's where they stuck the engines on this thing, which seems a clever idea. Although I guess you could stick them underneath in pylons, but anyway, that's where they put them on this model. Plane makers are revisiting such designs as the passenger jet industry tries to commit to more environmentally friendly aircraft. And this is from Airbus. So, I'm going to do a German accent there now. I'm trying to think of a French accent. We believe it's high time now to push the technology further and study what it brings to us. Jean-Brice Dumont, Executive Vice President of Engineering at Airbus, told reporters, we need these disruptive technologies to meet our environmental challenge. I'm not quite sure why he said disruptive technologies. Doesn't make sense to me. It is the next generation of aircraft. We are studying an option. So he's obviously having a think about it. He said it was too early.
Great accent.
Yes. Oh, man. He said it was too early to say whether such shapes could contribute to the next generation of medium-haul planes expected in the 2030s, but I don't see why not. Since the previous generation of tests, aerospace has seen improvements in materials that make such aircraft lighter, and computing power has increased, improving flight controls, Dumont said. Yeah, and the whole aircraft design that allows them to conjure these fantastic shapes is so much simpler now. They can use the vast computing power available to them. And Airbus is studying how the cabin would work and how the aircraft would be integrated into airports. Well, I can't see a problem really of integrating it when you've got a big blended body like that. Most of the lift comes from it. Doesn't have a huge wingspan, so it's going to fit. I guess it's just a case of where do you stick the jetway. So they can make the aircraft lighter, and they just apparently the one unresolved question is whether such a plane would have windows or use video screens to give passengers a sense of their surroundings. Well, I think from our experience, particularly those of us from the wide body world, the vast majority of passengers have no interest in their outside surroundings. So having a windowless airplane would only upset the ab geeks. And
right.
Yeah, I think they will probably just enjoy being in the cutting edge of technology if they got to fly in one of those. Another issue that has dogged such experiments in the past is how to handle sensations of movement, because passengers will be sitting further out from the center of the aircraft compared to the classic tube and wings model. They would move further when the aircraft turns. Rival Boeing to put more weight on a potential cargo roll. Well, yeah, I do see the point, because it's got a big, wide fuselage, and when the aircraft rolls, if you're sitting on the edge of the aircraft, you'll actually feel that you're part of the cabin going up and down as the aircraft rolls. But I think if, so long as you don't get any ex-fighter pilots whacking the bank on too hard, I think that would be a sensation that most passengers would be able to cope with without too many problems. So I'm quite excited about this. I see it as being practical. I think biggest problem is getting autoclaves large enough to cook all the carbon fiber technology that you'd need to create this enormous thing, if you're going to build it out of carbon fiber, and it looks like a lot of it will be. And it has potential. I don't see it being a problem at all. I think the cockpit window's a bit big, though.
Yeah, they seem to be. Maybe it's just because that's the scale model,
Yes.
whatever. You know.
Yes, I think so. But I'd be quite excited to see this, and I see absolutely no reason why it couldn't be flying in the next decade or so.
It will be interesting if they do. And as you mentioned, the the spreading wide the passenger distribution in the in the cabin. They'll just have to do something to reduce the roll rates, maybe, as you mentioned. As long as you're not really racking the thing up. And I would imagine that the computer-controlled system would probably kick in and keep your roll rate a low level, so you wouldn't have that bad sensation.
Yeah, for the one pilot that it'll have.
Yeah, exactly. Or if they have a pilot, right?
Yeah. They've just got a computer systems operator.
Yeah.
No, I see a lot of potential in it, and I think it'd be a fun thing to fly in. I don't see why not.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Thank you, sir. Item 11 from Private Pilot Rollo. He says, Private Pilot Rollo here. Just returned from a trip out in Swamp City, USA, and he was referring to New Orleans, Louisiana. I was out there for some training with my reserve unit just outside the city. My girlfriend, Andrea, whom you all met at Oshkosh last year, flew out there to spend some time with me and take in some of the sights the Big Easy has to offer. Like true Av geeks, we couldn't leave the area without visiting the site of the miraculous landing spot of Taka Flight 110 in 1988. Andrea is Salvadorian, so she knew of Captain Dardano her entire life, being that he is a well-known public figure in their native El Salvador. However, unlike my highly aviation-cultured better half, I learned of this event only after listening to Captain Nick's plane tale, The Dead Stick, back in 2018. That's also the nickname we give Captain Nick. After a quick Google search, we found...
I'm not dead yet!
After a quick Google search, we found the coordinates of where the plane landed and drove out toward the site. As we approached, we drove over Green Bridge and were able to capture a picture of the grass strip adjacent to the levee. We drove into the Coast Guard base next to the NASA facility with my military ID, but once on base, we couldn't get close enough to get a better view of the levee. Unfortunately, the best view we got was from Green Bridge on our drive in. Nevertheless, it was a pretty awesome experience to have been able to visit the site of this incredible event, which took place 5 days before I was born. I've attached a picture of the grass strip as viewed from the bridge. I apologize for the quality of the picture, but I thought it'd be a neat experience to share with the AVG community. Stay tuned for another feedback in the near future. Until then, wishing Captains Jeff and Dana endless coal for the Mad Dog. Happy cloud surfing for Dr. Steph on all her world travels, and endless scotch to the old pilot. Cheers.
Oh, endless scotch. That sounds lovely. I'll die of liver disease in a month.
So as he mentions, he sent a picture that he took from the bridge going over toward the Coast Guard base, and he actually has helped us in taking some red highlighter or red marker and circled the levee on which these Taka 737 landed. That's pretty neat. I've not seen that myself in person. Anyway, thank you, Private Pilot Rollo for sending us that. That was
Yeah,
cool.
that was very kind of him. I was hoping that they might have actually acknowledged the feat that occurred there with a historic plaque or
Yeah, you'd
something
think
like
so.
that, but apparently not. So
Nope.
don't forget about it, guys. It was a marvelous piece of flying and deserves remembering.
Nothing to see here. Move along. It didn't
Yes.
happen. It didn't happen.
No, there wasn't a 737 sitting right there on that bit of grass.
Item 15. Dana, you want to take this one?
Sure, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Hello, Captain Jeff. I am a fairly new addicted patron to your podcast. I'm an aviation freak and live in a suburb about 5 miles east of O'Hare's 27 center and 27 left runways. I am a terrified passenger once I get on an aircraft, but I love aviation just as much as I love my own mother, wife, and child. That's a pretty bold statement there, Joe, actually. Planes and flights, especially as I have the daily, more like minutely opportunity to see them are just awe-inspiring to me. In my younger years, I aspired to be an airline pilot, but a few really bad flights as a passenger, obviously flew on Nick's airplane, broke my will for pursuing that dream. I'm only kidding, Nick. Once upon a time, as a young man, I was fortunate enough to work as a ticket ramp agent at the Dothan Regional Airport, KDHN. Which at its peak during my tenure had air service such as Northwest Airlink, which only operated Saab 340 aircraft to Columbus, Georgia, and Memphis, and ASA at the time operated 7 flights a day to Atlanta on either the Embraer 120 or the ATR 72, which they were the big boys on the block. I was eventually laid off by Northwest Airlink and eventually became a member of the ASA team. Shortly, I was hired. They operated the CRJ 200 to Dothan, and once in a while the 700, CRJ 700, along with the ATR after retiring to Brasilia. Through my travels, I have had the privilege to work in Dothan, Montgomery, Alabama, Fort Walton Beach, and Old Panama City, Florida Airport, PFN. I'm not sure what the new airport is referred to now, and ECP is actually the code for that now. Joe?
Emerald Coast, Panama City.
Yep, Emerald Coast. That's exactly correct. Anyways, what was I? During my time at Fort Walton, I had my first chance to load baggage on an MD-88, and I thought, when I look back on that, those were the best days of my working life. Mainline Delta, in my opinion, is the best airline and the only airline I fly to this day. I felt so much pride in being trusted and being inside the cargo hold for the first time put me in a complete awe as I thought standing next to my favorite athlete. With that being said, I decided not to become a pilot because of my fear of flying, even though I am an aviation enthusiast. I became a police officer instead. We know somebody like that up in Wisconsin, don't we? I love your podcast, and I look forward to every new episode. If you ever find yourself within O'Hare overnight, I'd love to be a part of the meetups and with the APG community. I love the podcast and can't wait to the next one. I can't wait. That's actually wrong there. I love the podcast and can't wait for the next one. By the way, between podcasts, I have gone back and listened to old ones and that I haven't heard since I'm fairly new to the community. Safe travels, Captain Jeff, and keep up the great work. Well, I guess the rest of us are not doing much.
No.
So Jeff, and I agree, Jeff is doing a great job. Hey, Joe and I have a lot in common. I've actually reached out to Joe. We probably have crossed paths because I've flown into all those airports when I was at my former employer, ASA. So I'm 100% positive we've bumped elbows or said something over the ramp saying, hey, how you doing this morning or whatever else. But he sent
will you move your fat ass and drag my airplane out or something?
Yeah, get this thing moving. We're late.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you slackers?
Shut the damn doors.
Yeah, load the darn airplane. Will you get it done already?
Get a job.
Don't you know how to marshal an airplane? Set the parking brake. Do you know what that signal is? Yeah, I'm only kidding, Joe. Listen, it's a pleasure conversing back and forth with you. Thank you for what you do. Being a police officer isn't a noble profession, and I have no idea why you want to listen to this show, because we don't know what we're talking about. At least 50% of the time we do, though.
Yeah.
But anyways, thank you for writing in.
Absolutely.
All righty. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Joe, for the feedback. And let's see. We're getting close to the end of the show here. Let's go with item 16. And this is from Tracy, another Just a Navigator.
Greetings, Jeff and APG crew. This is Tracy from Portland, Oregon. Like some of your well-known listeners, I was just a navigator in my former military life, and I'm now a commercial pilot for a government flight department here in Portland. I wanted to leave some feedback on some recent episodes. First, Captain Nick's plain tale about Dieter Dengler. As a naval aviator, this tale struck close to home. I first learned about Dieter's story from a documentary by famed filmmaker Werner Herzog in a film called Little Dieter Needs to Fly. It's currently available on Amazon Prime. Highly recommend it for anyone that found that plain tale intriguing. Many more details there than Captain Nick possibly could have fit into his plain tale about Dieter Dengler. And someone wouldn't be disappointed. There was a movie a few years ago called Rescue Dawn in which Christian Bale played Dieter, but it hardly did justice to this guy's true story in life. Secondly, I'd like to comment on the de Havilland Dash 8 Q400 that was mentioned in episode 409. I flew the Dash 8 for about 1,000 hours as a first officer for Horizon Air in my previous life. And the airplane's a different beast from any other airplane I've flown, even other turboprops. You typically land with flaps 35, 23% torque, which is pretty high power for touchdown, and only about 2 degrees nose up in the flare, and not holding that power all the way down until the mains touch the ground, as opposed to the King Air 350, which I currently fly, where we typically drop power about 50 feet and land about 5 degrees nose up, more typical for a lot of different airplanes. But the Dash 8 is definitely a very flat sight picture. So I could see where that could be a possibility, depending on how that airline in question trained for that airplane could have possibly landed nose low, because it is a very different sight picture. Hope this helps shed some light on some of the recent conversations. As always, I welcome any APG community members for an IPA next time you're in Portland. We only have about 70 breweries in town, so there's no shortage of quality beers to sample that I think will rival anything else found in the country. Tailwinds and main gear landings. Tracy from Portland.
So I apologize, Tracy, if you sent this before I went out to Portland, although I probably wouldn't have had really much of an opportunity to meet up with you, but I was out there in that beautiful city last weekend. And if I'm ever back out there again, I'll make sure that I take my cousin Craig, and the two of us can join you for some great beer. And Portland is one of those cities that I remember back in the early, or the first renaissance of craft brewing in our country in the 90s, that I flew to fairly often, and it was like one of the best places in the country to experience excellent craft beer. And
so he's ex-Navy. You could have a talk like a pirate night.
Oh, we could do that.
Oh, arr.
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 That's the way all those Navy pilots talk.
Absolutely, yeah.
He had to really think about not doing that when he recorded that audio, apparently.
He did a good job. Some interesting stuff, though, that we were wondering about.
Yeah. Very, very good. We kind of surmised that might be the case with the Dash 8 as far as the pitch angle for landings, because it seems like we're seeing more and more of these instances with the nose gear touching down first, kind of, or collapsing or something, kind of issues with that airplane. So good stuff. Thank you, sir, for that. And I think we have time for item 11. I skipped a few that I think would be best to cover when Steph is back with us, because they involve the discussion about color blindness. So we
already did 11, Jeff.
Oh, did we?
How about 17?
What I mean is, did I say 11?
Yes,
I thought
did.
I said 17.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to say that. I don't know why I said that.
I say a lot of things I don't mean to say either, so it's okay.
Yeah, but those are all rude.
Oh,
disgusting.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's true. All right, item 17. Hi, all. Not a pilot, but I love your podcast. Yeah, a lot of people listen to the show, by the way, Dave, are not pilots. I think probably most of the people that listen to our show are not pilots. Anyway, I thought this article was intriguing about the global warming effect of contrails. Okay, so he gives us a link to a ScienceDaily.com article. And he says, in summary, here are some of the highlights. Contrails and the clouds they help form have as much of a warming impact on the climate as aviation's cumulative CO2 emissions because of an effect known as radiative forcing. Contrails only form and persist in thin layers of the atmosphere that have very high humidity. Because these layers are thin, small changes to flight altitudes would mean that aircraft could avoid these regions, leading to fewer contrails forming. Using data from Japan's airspace, they found that just 2% of flights were responsible for 80% of radiation forcing within the airspace. Taking into account the congestion in the aviation above Japan, the team simulated these planes to fly either 2,000 feet higher or lower than their actual flight paths and found that the contrail climate forcing could be cut by 59% by altering the altitudes of 1.7% of flights. The diversion in flight paths caused less than 0.1% increase in fuel consumption, but the researchers say the reduced contrail formation more than offset the CO2 released by the extra fuel. So, clearly there is no good way to predict the best altitudes in advance, but couldn't each aircraft measure humidity and temperature and give an alert to the pilots? Because you guys don't have rear view mirrors yet. Then about 1.7% of the time the pilots could request a different altitude from ATC. Do you think this is a near-term feasible solution? What problems would you foresee in implementing this? Thanks, Dave Ellison from Palo Alto, California. And I don't know. What do you guys think? That doesn't seem to me... I mean, I think it's a simplified solution, but I'm not sure it's very practical. I know that there are airplanes out there that... I know there are airplanes like the B-2. Didn't they say they have some kind of a... And probably a lot of military airplanes that have a way of knowing whether or not they're in the proper...
Yeah, it's called a rear vision mirror.
Oh, I was going to say, well, but I think the B-2, they don't have a rear view mirror, so they have some kind of a system on it that...
Oh, could have a camera, I guess.
Or maybe a camera. I was going to think, as I was reading this, I'm thinking, why not just put a camera back in the tail and point it back, and you can see whether or not you're spinning a contrail or not. I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, when I was in the Air Force in the, back in the 70s, for years, our Air Force meteorologists had been briefing us daily on the predicted contrail levels, and they would put up, a graph with, and it went, no contrails. Then you have a short area where you would have non-persistent contrails. So you'd make one that would be a short duration, and then there'd be a band of persistent contrails. And if you continue to climb, you go back through a non-persistent area. And then if you got above it all, you'd be in an area with no contrails at all. And if we wanted to get through that band without letting anyone see us, we'd try and do it near a vertical angle as possible. So you'd go, right, well, we need to get up to shoot this guy. Let's pop up, in a steep climb and just try and make our trails as small as possible. So the technology has been around for years to predict where these trails are. Of course, that changes when you're on a big long flight because you're moving from one air mass to another, and the conditions in another different air mass will be different to your local conditions. So that's not, but every country could, I think they got most of the information from weather balloons, and they, most air masses, most countries throw at weather balloons, but I'm sure their modern technology is bound to be a weather satellite way of measuring the factors they need to predict this. So I don't think it's quite possible that they could predict it, but I am going to really have a problem with the fact that they claim a diversion in flight paths caused less than a tenth of a percent of increase in fuel consumption. I think that's absolute rubbish. Mm-hmm. We were told on our most fuel efficient aircraft that 1,000 feet was a 1% fuel consumption penalty if you went down, slight left you if you went up, and on the 4-engine aircraft we flew, it was 1.5% if you went down and slightly less if you went up. And we know from the fact that so many airliners leave contrails and they're flying around usually at their optimum flight levels. It coincides with areas where the trails are likely to be. So you're going to get all these airliners flying well outside their optimum cruising level, and their fuel consumption, I think, is going to be markedly increased. And if you're only talking about a change of a few percent, I think that's going to be well countered by the increase in consumption that you're going to have. And also, of course, the airspace is so busy that if you deny the use of a few thousand feet of prime cruising altitude, the rest of the airspace is going to get very busy, and some airliners will be forced well below their best cruising altitude.
Thereby putting out much more CO2.
Yeah,
because of the
exactly.
increased fuel consumption. The other thing I was just thinking about is that once, at least here in the U.S., above 18,000 feet, I know it's a different altitude in various countries, where we all switched to a standard altimeter setting. What do we call it? The standard datum plane or whatever. And so we're instead of changing our altimeters or barometric altimeter settings as we go into different pressures and the air mass, our airplanes are actually, going up and down to keep that constant pressure altitude. And I'm wondering if the areas where contrails form, or ideally form, if they are also varying based on pressure or not. And if that's the case, you might be in a little segment or a part of the air mass where you're not putting out contrails, but as soon as the pressure starts changing, then all of a sudden you may be right back in, the ideal.
I think it's primarily a temperature factor,
thing,
and of course humidity that has a big part to play. So that's not necessarily, I don't think, going to be linked to pressure, but I do see a point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like, there's just that one altitude, like 31,000 feet, for a long distance. It might be 31,000 feet for 5 miles. But then it might switch to 32,000 feet for the next 5 miles. So,
and you're going to have all these airliners trying to negotiate different cruising levels to get out of the layer they're now trailing in. And over busy airspace, it's going to be pretty impractical.
Well, like Ralph, who also sent in this piece of feedback. Thank you, Ralph. This link to this article. He says, "I think that sounds like Bravo Sierra."
Well, I think the theory is good.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're reflecting, your contrails are creating clouds, and although they're deflecting some of the sun's rays above, so they're not getting down to the Earth's surface, they're trapping an awful lot using the greenhouse effect. You know how the greenhouse works. So heat below, and you're only going to reflect the sun rays when the sun's up, but you're always going to be reflecting heat waves from below 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I can see the basic principle, but trying to cut down on the contrails, I think, is going to be tough. I think it might be electric airplanes might be the way to do it.
That is true. Yeah. And
true.
It's true, but don't hold your breath. It's going to be a long time before we see long haul type of flying with all electrics. But you never know.
Particularly on long haul.
Maybe there'll be a huge breakthrough in technology, and then we'll look back at this show and say, "Oh, those Luddites! I had no idea that we'd all be in electric everything just a few years down the road."
Yeah, very true.
Okie doke. Well, that's going to be it for the feedback today and our show. And this is the point where we say, hey, why don't you, if you are interested in learning more about the Airline Pilot Guy show, head over to our website, airlinepilotguy.com, and you'll find information about the crew and the community, which is the best part of all of this, the community. We have an APG community calendar where you can see where Dana and I are flying. And if you see that we're going to be in your area, feel free to contact us and set up some kind of a meetup because we always enjoy that. Also, merchandise and information about the coffee fund and a separate standalone Plaintail page where you can find information how you can subscribe to the Plaintail only RSS feed, which is kind of nice. And let's see, we're also on social media, what I like to call the Sochmeds.
Yeah, we're on Facebook, where you can get us at Airline Pilot Guy, and that also works nowhere else except perhaps the web page, which would be airlinepilotguy.com. However, you can get us at APG Crew on both a Facebook, I'm sorry, on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not very good at this, am I?
No, you're great. You're fantastic. I couldn't have done it better.
There you go.
And also, we're on Slack. And let's see if I can tune in the microphone from the area where Hillel is standing by. Hang on. Hillel. Why is it that he's always taking a shower during this part of the show?
That's when he gets smelly.
Yeah. Come over here. Come up. Yeah. Dry off a little bit with the towel. You're getting wet. You're getting everything wet here. Okay. Here he is.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo at airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel. Now you can go back and do whatever you were doing before. Okay.
Finish your ablutions.
Well, he's back in the shower apparently. Okay.
Did he even wrap a towel around his waist?
I think he was having trouble finding the towel.
Oh, okay.
I got shampoo in my eyes.
See? All right. And with that, it is now time for us. Okay. Well, don't worry about it. We'll talk after the show. Gosh, darn it. Man.
He's
Such a
very
pain
persistent,
sometimes.
isn't
Yes.
he? Like those contrails. Very persistent.
Very persistent. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and talons. What did I
Bye,
say?
everybody.
Wait a minute. Talons, Douglas. Oh, there we go. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and talons, Douglas.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, guys.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah. That was awful.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Awful? No, I don't like awful.
What was that?
Give me a nice bit of steak.
The Muppets thing where they say that. I have that somewhere. I just can never find it. That's all right. Recorder's off. Mine's off.
Yes.
I think we're okay, though. I don't think I'm going to need your recording again.
Okay.
Everything sounded good from my end. Apparently, we were having some issues with the stream.
The stream to YouTube quit about 20 minutes ago, I think.
Huh.
So
Well, that's odd.
Sorry about that, guys. This guy's been a pain in my side.
What, your contractor?
The guy for the granite.
Uh-huh.
He's as stupid as a box of rocks.
Hope he doesn't watch this video.
I didn't say his name and who he works for, so it doesn't matter. I doubt he
recognize
does.
you. I go, I think he's talking about me.
It doesn't matter.
Don't worry. I don't think that we'll have to worry about him watching that. Okay. Well, sometimes you just got to work around whatever you have to work around, right?
Right. And I was talking around in circles and circles and circles and circles with this guy for the last 5 minutes.
Oh boy. Well, if you need to go right now and do some supervision, go ahead.
No, everything's done for the day.
So I do apologize to those of you who are. I'm hoping that YouTube is still recording this, and if not, I hope that the people know that you can, or maybe I'll put a note in the description of the YouTube video if it ends prematurely. How embarrassing! And they can go and check out the Facebook Live video. Apparently, that had some hiccups too, but it was mostly okay, from what I could tell from the comments from everybody there.
Yep, I think so.
So I don't know. That might be an issue with StreamYard, which is the platform that we're using to do the recording of this, and it's sending out the data to the two different streams, the YouTube stream and the Facebook Live stream. So perhaps I need to send off an email to a couple of the developers to see if they had some issues there. Anyway, it's a work in progress, right? We try to give you the best experience we can, but sometimes technology fails us.
Indeed.
So
not through lack of effort on our part.
Yes, that's so true. So true. All right. Well, anything to say to our wonderful live chat room people before we go?
Yeah, you're all useless. Oh, Michael Kuipers came up with happy contrails to you. There you go.
Oh,
Thank you.
Happy contrails to you.
The one contribution for a show title.
Yes. Now Liz says she has some ideas apparently.
Oh,
she's
good.
written
Okay.
down. Although usually the ideas that Liz have are really not that
Very
good,
rude. We can't.
Yeah, we
publish
don't
them.
ever
Disgusting.
She's giving us a thumbs down.
She's a vile woman.
Vile. That's a great word. What one word would you use to describe Liz? Vile.
Oh, you lot, you're going to be in trouble.
I know.
I didn't say any of that, Liz.
She knows we're
I think
kidding.
you're lovely.
She knows we're kidding.
My hair's off to you, Liz.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Shoot. I forgot to say thank you to Liz before we ended the show. Sorry, Liz. Oh, well,
Do it in
that's
post.
I'm dead to her.
Speaking in post, I'm gonna sit here and re-record that, and I'm gonna send it off to you. You can do as you choose.
Okay.
Because it was so terrible. I had just quite literally sat down.
Well, we just assumed that you had read that before the show.
I did actually.
Oh, okay.
That's the problem. But I was just so flustered with everything that's going on.
Well, one of the things I have to do when I'm looking through stuff, sometimes, as you can see, the people that write their feedback maybe don't write it, or they'll mess up words, or they'll mess up sentence structure and that kind of thing. And so I do a lot of correction, putting commas in so I know when to pause.
On the fly as well.
Yeah, and on the fly as well. Yes, you're right. I just kind of go, okay, I think this is what this person means to do right here is for me to read it in this way. But so what we're saying is basically, you people sending us feedback, you need to go back to English
proper
class.
English class. That's Jeff's pet peeve, folks. If you don't know,
Yeah,
proper English.
I've been pretty good about not saying anything about it. But yeah, it is, unfortunately. It's one of my many character flaws. Where is my my special little audio piece of feedback that
That's another of your character flaws. Oh, you found it. I was going
Found
to
it.
say you can never find the sound bites.
There we go.
Jeff's pet peeves.
I have very little patience for stupidity.
Okay. Anyway, so let's see. Let me get back to the screen that's showing our stream. It is now time for us to leave all of you out there, and hope that you, if you didn't see the whole show, that you listen to the audio only podcast, which you should anyway. Subscribe, and helps with our numbers, and also it's a little bit, I do some work on, fixing it up a little bit, and so check it out. Oh, by the way, many of you already know this, but started employing chapters in the audio podcast, and so it's a little bit more easy to work with. And if you are one of those kind of people that go, I don't really want to hear you talk about the news, I want to go straight to the chat about what you guys have been doing. I'm just kidding. Most of you don't want to hear that. Anyway, the chapters allows you to see what, where all this kind of stuff, or if you see the item that we're talking about and you have no interest in that, you can skip it and move to the next item. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. So check that out if you haven't been listening to the audio only podcast feed, and I think you'll like it. I think it's a good feature. Anyway, with that, we'll see you next week.
Yep.
All right.
Someone's stealing your car, Dana.
Yep.
Bye,
Julie,
Rowan.
Julie, come back. She's leaving.
Cheers.
Quit.